My guest today grew up in New York with a father who was an illegal marijuana grower, and when your dad runs the operation, getting brought into the business is practically a family tradition. By his teens, he was selling pot. By the time he was fully in, he was moving pounds and running a serious flipping operation. He ended up getting caught, did New York State prison, got out, tried to stay straight, and a probation violation pulled him back in, and then the feds came for him. His name is Jared Callahan, and this is his complete story. Where'd you grow up, Jared?
Schenectady, New York.
What was your upbringing like?
Middle class. I was a good kid. Both parents at home. I was born in Schenectady, St. Clair's Hospital. I played sports. I didn't get in much trouble, not until later years. Both my parents were in the house. My mom was probably the backbone of my family. My dad worked a lot. Right around 15, 16 years old, that's when things started to change. That's when I started to hang around. I was playing sports. I played football. I played baseball. Right around 15, 16, I started to hang around a different group of people. And, I could see at that time in my life, things changed. And I always, I tell my sons, especially my youngest son, that I saw him get in a couple situations, and that's when I made a big change in my life, because my worst fears were that my kids followed in my footsteps. So that was my main force and main motivation to change. And so for me, when I saw like my youngest son Landon, I saw him get in a situation, and I thought to myself, if I don't step in, because I used my own life, I love my father. Me and my father are like best friends. But I think that was the biggest issue, was that my father was like my best friends. I'll start with, my father grew weed, and right around that age, about 15, I maybe 14, probably 13, I started to realize what he did. I remember going to my mother, and I think I found some marijuana, and he would have friends over the house and stuff. They would come over, they'd go in his room, they'd leave. Now he was always involved in my life. He tried, he coached baseball one year. He was the commissioner for football. But he had a lot of people over, and I kind of suspected something. I remember going to my mom about it. She's like, "You're going to have to ask your father." I asked my father. He was straight up with me, told me what it was. I remember it really affected me. It really bothered me. But then as a little bit time went on, planted some seeds in my head. I remember the first time I went in there and I stole a little bit of his stash. And me and my best friend, his name's Casey. Anybody saw me back then, I was always with Casey. I consider him my brother. And his father, I think, same thing. So we started smoking weed, and I was around 13, 14 years old. And that's where like I said, big changes in my life. And then I started realizing other people were getting into it. So I started selling. I would take weed from my father and sell it to people. That's where it all kind of started.
Now, why did it bother you that he was growing weed and selling it?
I just, I wasn't, because it was drugs, and when growing, I think in school then, there's no, especially back then, it's a different time now, especially when it comes to marijuana, but back then it was drugs. And it was like, my dad does drugs, and it was a big, um, it was traumatizing to me, I think, and until it wasn't, and I think it's a different time now with, especially when it comes to marijuana, but um, eventually it wasn't a big deal.
What year was this so the audience knows?
Okay, so we're going. This is probably 92 or 93. I was about, let's see, 15, about 15 years old. So I um I would steal his weed. We would smoke it. Eventually, you start meeting different people because now you're hanging around a bunch of different people. A lot of the kids I was hanging around with before that was kids from school and kids that were in the sports. Now, me, Casey, and my brother, because I forgot to mention my brother, we're starting to hang around a different group of people. And then you're talking about fighting, drinking, smoking weed, burglaries, things of that nature. And now you're meeting people, and I realized, oh, you know what? I can take some weed, I can sell it, I'm making money. Now, I come from a middle class household. I went to school with a lot of Italian kids. It was probably mostly Italian kids, and a lot of them had money. Now, we didn't not have money, but we weren't. I just remember going to school and seeing kids like when school would start, dudes would have Jordans on, and uh, I think at the time there was Guess jeans and cross colors, and I think Carl Kanai maybe, and I just couldn't afford them. You know what I mean? I'd get maybe one pair of sneakers and would never be Jordans. It'd be like maybe the Bo Jacksons, which is great. But I think when you're around people that have more than you and you don't, it kind of affects. It affected me anyway. I think it caused me to want more. And I think this is what I'm trying to say is like, so I started realizing I could make some money with the weed, started selling the weed, started, you know, putting money to the side. Eventually, by starting to know different people, I I found people that I could buy weed from. So I started buying weed. I think I started with a quarter pound. I would piece that up and I would sell it. I wouldn't double my money, but I'd make some good money. And eventually it went to half pounds, pounds, started meeting more people. So by, I don't know, I think right around when I graduated. So I graduated high school. I was probably about 16, 17. By then I was selling, I was getting pounds, maybe 2, 3 pounds at a time. I'd break them down and I'd sell it like that. And as you get into the game, you start seeing the players in them. You know what I mean? So I would keep my ears open, see who's doing what, and now that I got that, I got to find a better connect. And I would just, I would, look around, and eventually I found it. I think whenever you're looking for something, if you look hard enough, you'll find it. Eventually, that led to me um, copping 10 to 20 pounds at a time. Back then, it was. I know a lot of people are, they smoke the good weed now. Back then, everything was brick weed. That's another thing. Well, I used to take my father's weed. My father grew it, and it was really, it's, the good heady weed. I think they call it. It was nice and green and stunk, and it was real sticky. And at the time, everybody was used to the brick weed. So I would literally nobody wanted homegrown then. It was so weird. Now it's the opposite. I would like squish it down and make it look like brickweed just to sell it because nobody wanted they thought homegrown wasn't as good and it was actually better. Just weird, something weird I remember. And eventually I started copping 10. I met a guy, the dude the dude that I met ended up on America's Most Wanted. His name was Jeff McGee. He ended up killing a cop. That was a crazy situation, but that was later on. Um, After a while, I kind of outgrew him, and I met this another guy, and as the time's going on, I'm meeting people. I got different people buying it. And I just started just to I remember when at first it was just to get my truck on the road, to get a few, some better clothes, and, eventually it led to me, seeing a bigger picture, and I started saving, and, I think, like, when you get caught up in that, it brings money, it brings respect, and it can be intoxicating, and it was for me anyway, and, I just before I knew it, I was, I think I was in over my head, and, it led to, a prison bit. A lot of things happened in between that time. Um, my brother, when we were younger, my brother was always a little more wild than me, and he got kicked out of high school, and I think where my brother when he got kicked out, my mother was, like, focused on my brother, and I was always doing well. She didn't really know what I was doing. I kept it hidden from her, and when she focused on him, it kinda let me it freed me up to do whatever I wanted to. He ended up, getting locked up in Berkshire Farms. It's like it's a lockup for, like, adolescents, and he ended up doing 2 years. That in itself is a crazy story. We had gotten a big fight, and he hit a kid in the head with a hammer, and, I think they charged him with it because he was only 15 at the time. They charged him with, like, attempted murder, but it got broken down. He ended up getting 2 years in Berkshire Farms. Um, but my mom focusing more on him and thinking I was doing alright gave me room to do whatever I wanted. So, as he gets locked up, I'm selling weed, and, my father was like I love my father, he's like my best friend, but I think that was the biggest issue. I think that's like, with my son, we're close, but I know, like, I gotta be a father, I can't be a best friend. There's gotta be a line, and that line gets blurred when you're just friends, and that's what happened, and I began selling weed with my father, and he would smoke weed with me and my friends, drink with us, and party with us, and that's something I will never cross that line with my kids. Um,
What did your mom think about that?
I don't think she liked it, but there wasn't really much she could do. My mom and my mom's awesome. Um, she's definitely, like I told you, the backbone of our family. Um, she would do anything for us, and it was tough. Eventually, they split up. It wasn't then; it was years later. Um, but she didn't like it, and I remember us, being we had a room in our house, and a lot of my friends would come over there, and we would party in the back room, just drink and smoke weed. And I remember my mom just saying, like, because I always wondered, like why she kind of let us do that. Because in her mind, she'd rather us be home and in the house than out and about doing that. And it made sense to me. It definitely made sense. But I don't think there was much she could do. And she had gone through so much with my brother Dave that, just me being home and her having, like, her eyes on me was, you know, helped her deal with it. Um, Eventually I ended up getting my own apartment. And that was like, this is around 96. I'm like 16. I got my own apartment, and I'm just, I'm doing my own thing. And there was so my brother, he was locked up from when I was 15 to no, I think it was how old was I? 16, he was 14. So he came home when he was 16 and I was just graduating from high school. And we would go up to Lake George on Memorial Weekend. There was a crew of us. We were probably like 30 deep up in Lake George, and we would drink and get in fights, and it was, it was wild. He had just came home, and we got in a fight, and he got hit. The fight happens. He got hit hard, and I remember him. I'm like, yeah, you all right? He's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. He wasn't good, and I'll explain that later. And we go back to where we're all hanging out. We were all right there by the McDonald's in downtown of Lake George. I mean, everybody from Schenectady would be up there. People from other places. It was a wild time, and I remember I had my car and I had the doors open. And we had rap playing, and we got in like two more big fights. And the end of that night, he was supposed to go home with a friend of mine and my cousin. And I don't know what ended up happening, but I had a room, and we got in the room. About 20 minutes later, I get a knock on the door. This kid's like, "Yo, your brother, your brother." Your brother's unconscious. So I come running out, and he was right by the drive-through at McDonald's, and my cousin's holding him, and he's out. I mean, he's unconscious. My cousin's holding him. He had gotten a fight with a kid, and it was like slippery, slipped and hit the back of his head, and he ended up going to the hospital that night, and he had a fracture on the back of his head, on the side of his head, and he was in bad shape. He was out of it. Real delusional. He would come to and just say stuff that didn't make sense. And he ended up going home that night. My parents ended up there. And then that night I went to find that so this was up in Lake George. I think they bring him to somewhere in Glens Falls. So when I was with a bunch of kids, we left. This is that same night. So I left to go back to Schenectady. On the way to drop one of the kids off, I drove by where I knew this kid lived and found him, and I ended up attacking him. I kicked in his car, jumped on his hood, and this was actually Memorial Weekend. That was my birthday weekend. This was a real bad weekend. A bunch of things happened that weekend. Smashed his hood in, and he took off. I jumped in the car. We took off, and at the time I was living in this apartment. It was my buddy's father's house. So we get back to the apartment, and I had been in a lot of fights back then. So I learned that, when you get in a fight, you can make a report. And if you make a report, you don't have to press charges, but you make a report and they make a report. Usually the cops will just say, if you both press charges, you're both going to jail. If not, we'll let you both go. So as soon as I got home, I was with my girlfriend, and is my kids' mothers, and I want to respect her privacy, but I'll refer to her as my girlfriend. And I told her, call the police, just call the police, and I told her, just say they hit you. So she does. She calls them up. And I remember when she called, she was like, I think she said something. They're like, wait, and because she gave her the address, she's like, yeah, there's a cop on your way there now, because this guy must have obviously called the cops. So they roll up. The cop. I went outside to talk to the cop, and my girlfriend says, told him that, and the kid was in the car, and she said, yeah, told him that the kid hit me. She told the cop the kid hit him. Kid hit her. And, I had told her to do that just so we didn't get arrested. But but the kid was like, nah, he had me arrested anyway. And because what I found out is he wanted his car paid for. I did a lot of damage to his car. So we ended up both getting arrested. I remember being home. I'm like, yo, what's up with you, man? He's like, nah, you messed my car up. And I'm going, we could have handled that elsewhere. You're gonna have me arrested?" And he was like, so he had me arrested. He got arrested. I think my uncle came to bail me out. I got out on bail, went home that same night, and I'll get back to what ended up happening with that. At the same time, my brother was at home and he wasn't doing well. So my mother's dealing with that. I get home to the apartment, um, and that same night, so I got my brother's situation going on. I got the situation. I just got arrested, and I think that was one of my first. They arrested me for an felony because of the damage to his car. It's my first felony arrest. And then that night, we got a bunch of friends over. So I lived in that apartment with two other guys. I was dealing out of the apartment. This was '97. I remember it plain as day. Biggie's album came out, Capone and Noriega. When I think about times, I can remember the albums that came out. Back then, there wasn't social media. You had to buy the CD. CD would drop. We'd go get it. So at the time, Capone and Noriega was hot, and so was Biggie, Life After Death. And we're all sitting there, we're chilling. We lived in an upstairs flat. I remember sitting, and now these flats, when you would walk up the door, you would walk in, and now you'd be in the dining room. Down the hall, there'd be room, bathroom here, and then the kitchen. Then there was a big arc. There was another part of the living room, a porch. I'm telling you all this because it means, I'll describe this, you understand. I'm sitting there and we hear the door. When you would open the bottom door, you'd hear the top door kind of, muffle. And I heard my boy went to check who it was because nobody really came over at the time. I'm dealing, but I would do, unless you were a good friend, nobody would come to the house. I would drive around and deliver stuff. And we hear a muffle at the door. And I remember I just seen a dude come through with a mask, and he puts a gun to my boy's head, backs him up the wall. He said, "Back the fuck up." Excuse my language. And then another dude and another dude and another dude. And I was like, whoa. And, when it first hits you, you're like, your heart's beating, and it's like thinking somebody's dressed up, and then you realize this is real. So I remember my bedroom was right there. So I run in the bedroom. I shut the door. Now there's like 3-4 other people there. And I remember there was 2 girls there. One of my roommates had a girl over and her friend, because I can remember feeling so bad for them. And I remember the door, the guy's like, open. He's like, and they were speaking Puerto Rican. The dude was like, open the door. I was like, fuck. Open the door. Get on the ground. Puts me on the ground. He's got everybody on the ground. Everybody's at gunpoint. I mean, every one of these dudes had guns. It was either 5 or 6 dudes. So they just got us at gunpoint. They're going through the house, and they're speaking Puerto Rican, speaking Spanish. And I remember one dude goes, "Yo, whose house is this?" And they wanted to know who was, they were looking for my money, looking for my stash. I found out later because there was a kid there who knew these guys. And so, I raised my hand. I was like, right here. He's like, "Yo, where's the money at? Where's the money at?" And I was like, "Bro," because he had a couple bucks or something he took out of my pocket. And I had some money stashed, and I didn't have much there, though. I think I had like a pound of weed. And dude was like, "Yo, if I don't find none, you're going to die, bro. You're going to die." So he's going through, and he didn't find no more because he already had he had everything. And I remember him coming up on me. And he's like, "Oh, I told you. And he said something to the dude, and the other dude started arguing with him. I remember, I can remember this plain as day. Put my head down. I was like, I remember thinking about my grandmother. I called her Granny. She had just passed away. I remember thinking, I'm coming. Because I thought I really thought they were going to shoot me. And then the next thing I felt was like the back of my head, bang. And I remember my boy, Jim, was right next to me. And I remember his face and the way he looked at me. And right when he hit me, you ever get in the shower and the water hits your hair and it comes down? You feel the warm water. Well, that's what it felt like, but it was blood. And I remember looking at his face. He had blood spatter on his face. I looked down. There's already a little puddle of blood. Everything started getting dizzy. And then I I thought he shot me. And then he get everybody up. They threw us in that room and they bounced. And everything started getting wobbly. And I was like, yo, what the? And he was like, yo, he gun butted you. And I still got this scar in the back of my head. So they leave. And I'm telling you this story because there's more to this. Just remember that situation. I'll get back to it. So that the next day comes, we end up, somebody called the cops. And I think the cops came. They did not, and they didn't care. They didn't, because they already kind of knew what was going on. Because this house, we had an upstairs. And upstairs, we had like pool table. We had like a little bar. There'd be a lot of people in and out partying. And not so much like I wasn't selling out of the house. I would ride around and sell drugs, but sell weed. But, the neighbors had been complaining. And when they arrested me for the kid's car for the felony, I remember seeing up on the dashboard, it said drug activity. I think it was 1014 Austerlitz Avenue or something like that. And I just remember that. And I'm thinking, they think, because there's so much going on there, they think, we're selling out the house or whatever. So when they came there, they really didn't give a shit. They were like, yeah, it's what happens when you're doing what you guys are doing. They didn't care, man. And back then, they didn't have any cameras on their the cops didn't have cameras and stuff. And I think they said they were just talking a lot of shit. They leave. The next day I go to my mom's. I got my head wrapped up. I'm thinking like, wow, I can't believe that just happened. There was 2 girls in there, had nothing to do with this, that life that we were living, and they didn't know what the hell, I just remember feeling so bad for them. And went to my house. My brother was still out of it. My mom ended up bringing him back to the hospital. He ended up having fractures on the back of his skull, on the side of his skull, and his brain swelled up. And he went through that for like a week or 2. He was, even the doctor was like, he could have permanent brain damage. And I think it did affect him. And I'm going to get into that. But, so that ends up happening. Time goes on. We stayed in that apartment. My boy that I lived with ended up getting a 12 gauge, and he had birdshot in it. Birdshot is like the pellets, or not pellets, but they're, like small BBs. So he has that in his room. We would lock the front door about a month and a half later, because that happened. That was Memorial Weekend. So right around the end of June, or it might have been the first week of July, 1997. I came, I'm running around doing my thing. I come back to the house, and we started using the back door. Kept the front door, how the stairs go up, we jammed like a 2x4 in to keep the door jammed so he couldn't come through. And I think my roommate's girlfriend came over. He opened the door. She was supposed to put the stick back and didn't. Now, all of a sudden, so I'm in the house. She comes in. Now the door's not locked, and just so happens I'm grabbing something to go make some runs, and I look down the hall and I see a dude pop his head out, and he looked Puerto Rican. So my roommate peeps this. I mean, right when he sees this dude, he knows something's wrong, because like I told you, I never sold drugs where I lived. I never did that. I would run around. I was a delivery guy. That was basically how I worked at this point in my life. He peeped that. So he's already running to grab that gun. So I walked down, because I'm like, what? And now he just got his head beat. I was like, yo, what's up, man? He's like, yo, I need some weed. And I'm like, nah, I don't have nothing, man. He's like, nah, you ain't got no weed? I'm like, nah. Now he's basically in the house. Now I'm walking into the dining room. There's an arc in the wall. And I said, I'll give you my beeper number. Back then we were using beepers. We didn't even have cell phones, man. It was crazy. So I went into the room. I grabbed a piece of paper. And by the time I did that, I hear, back the fuck up. So I'm standing like this. There's an arc in the wall. I can't see beyond the wall. and where he just walked up, and then that's where you would go down. There's a couple rooms, and that's where my boy Mike just went in to grab his 12 gauge. And I'm standing right here, and now the dude's got the gun on me, and he's like, "Yo, put your hands up." So I got my hands up. I'm like, "Yo, just chill, bro." He's standing about right there. I got my hands up, and now I can see where I'm looking. There's a couch there. My other roommate's dead asleep. He sleeps through this whole thing, which is crazy. The door's open right here, and I can see the windows open. There's no screen or nothing. And we're two stories up. And I used to be a skinny kid. And I forgot to tell you that. Growing up, I was a real skinny kid. When I first got locked up, I think I weighed in at $138. I was just skinny. I was fast. And I think that's, what made me, I think I had a complex. I had like people look at a little skinny guy. And, I got in a lot of fights, and especially when I was drinking, and I was skinny. I think I had a complex, but I was very athletic, very fast, and I remember these guys got his gun on me, and I saw him, and I don't know if he saw my boy Mike, and that's why he started, but I sensed like he started getting. I just sensed something was going on, so I just, as soon as he looked that way, I book. Thank God he didn't hit me, but I'm running straight for that window. I'm jumping out that window. So I'm running like this, and what I didn't know is he was seeing my man with the either he saw his man walking up, and just as so I'll tell you what I did and what happened when I did this. So I jumped straight out the window, and as I jumped out the window, I kind of grabbed the window sill, did like a flip out the window to broke my fall. As I'm coming down to hit the ground. I didn't know they had a dude out front at running point. I hit the ground. He pulls up. He shoots 3 times. Now, the dude, the guy's house, it was my boy Stu. It was his father's house. His father was downstairs on the couch with another dude. Those bullet holes went right through past their head. And I'm laughing just because I'm thank God it didn't hit nobody. But so the bullets go through his head. And I remember my father always saying to me, my father was a hunter. And he always said, "You ever get shot at, zigzag, man. It's your best chance." And I just remember him saying that. And I remember I hit the ground, popped right back. I mean, I landed right on my feet, man. And it sounds crazy, but this happened. Popped up. He's shooting. I start running zigzag. I run to the back. I hear a boom. So I run, and I'm now I like in your mind he's right behind you, but the guy didn't chase me, and I have to believe he didn't really shoot at me, and he shot up just to shoot, or he's a real bad aim. Because if I'm standing up straight, he shot about 10 feet above my head through the window. Because you know how you got to walk up to a porch, and then you got the window. So the bullets went through the window. I go to the back. I'm behind a car. I look. There's nobody there. And at that time, I look up, and I can see into the window, into the kitchen, and I see my boy Mike like with the gun, like saying something. So I'm like, all right, wait a minute. I don't hear nothing, see nothing. I run up the back. He's like, yo, I hit him, bro. And I'm like, what? So what happened was, so when all that happened and I went out running, there was another dude that came in. Now, they didn't have masks on this time either, which was kind of crazy. And the dude that had a gun on me, there was another dude, and I don't know if there was other guys or not. There's a guy out front, and there might have been one other guy. But the other dude came up, and like in those old houses, because it was an older house, you have the trim so when you went from the dining room to the hallway, and there's a bathroom in the 2 rooms, you have trim that comes around, that goes around. It was like big wooden trim. And this dude posted up on here because he saw him with the gun. So Mike came out with the gun, and the dude like pulled it, and he jumped back in the room, and he said what he did was he just pulled the gun out and shot it. Kind of like went out of his hands, and it hit. So this dude's sitting here like this. It hits the trim like right next to him and ricochets. So it didn't hit him directly in the face, but it takes a chunk out of the wall, and all the shrapnel of the wood and all the BBs right in his face. Because you could see where he was standing. Like when we went up there later and looked, and you looked at the sheetrock in the wall, you saw the outline of his head of where the guy was standing. And he started like screaming, and the other dude that was with him grabbed them, and they were out. They left. The cops came, obviously. Now, under New York state law, as long as your gun, I don't know what would happen if the gun was illegal, but luckily the gun was totally legal. What we did, we didn't break any laws. They came in, we were fearing for our lives. If he shot and killed them, wouldn't even been a charge. Now, if if the gun's illegal, I don't know, maybe, but yeah, they came and they were like another. It was, I think it was the same cop that had been there prior, and he's like, "Yeah, man, you guys are getting what you asked for." Type, that was his basic his attitude. And I remember scrambling to like, because there was stuff in the house, and we're like throwing everything upstairs and stuff. And that was a crazy situation that happened. And like I think we talked a little before the podcast, and I told you I want to make it real clear to the audience that I've done a lot in my life late, as of the last couple years to forget about this, especially me and my kid's mother. My life has been, centered around my kids. Um, I made all my changes in my life because of my kids, because, I always thought like, everything I did when I ended up catching my bid was, I got to deal with that, and, as I got older, having my kids, and realizing that no, when anytime they went through something, I would, if it was I felt that, man, like as if it was me. And I realized how many people I hurt, especially my mother, my kid's mother, and my loved ones that, they did those bids with me. Anything that would happen, it would affect them. And I'm telling this story, so I can, I'm telling this so people, others that can relate to me, or even youth that can, if they're, ever thinking about doing something like this, or they're already involved in this, can see these are the consequences of these actions, man. This is just one little incident. There's tons that things that happen because of my, my lifestyle. And I'm hoping, when you listen to these stories that you take from this and see what this brings. Somebody could have got killed, and that was because I dealt weed. Those guys were only there to steal my weed or steal my money, and everybody else had to be affected by that. And I just back then I didn't think like that. I thought about, oh, I'm gonna get money. I like the money, the power, the respect that comes with it, and I was very self-centered and selfish, and that's all I really cared about. Loved my family, but I didn't, I didn't really think about how it affected them. I always put myself first, I think. I think that's the biggest change in my life, is that now I put my loved ones first before I do something or try to do. I'm not perfect. So going back to that, after that situation, I ended up, did I go back to my house, my parents' house? No, I ended up getting an apartment somewhere else on my own. My other roommate, his name's Mike. He slept right through that whole thing. I mean, I can't, I don't know how, but I remember him waking up, and we're telling him what happened. He's like, "Well, the cops are coming," and it was unreal. The crazy part of that story is the guys that did it, because that dude got, after apparently he went to the city. They were wanted. We didn't know who they were. We found this out later, that they ended up going to the city and got caught because of the wounds he had to his face. And then they were wanted for other stick ups and burglaries, and they all got like tons of time. We didn't have nothing to do with it. They got caught for like, I think they did a Super 8 motel. They robbed like a Friendlies. They were a bunch of stick up kids, and they got caught and had nothing to do with us. I ended up seeing the dude on TV later in the news one day, and I was like, "Yo, that was the dude." But so going back to my brother, so this was like a month after. So my brother's situation, he, at this point in time, he's a little better, but he started dealing with, he started having paranoia. Um, like he got real paranoid about it. He had a girlfriend at the time, and I remember sitting at the table and I'm eating. My mother had made some food, and I was over the house, and he was living there. I had my own apartment, but I would be home. I would always go. I was always welcomed home. I always had a bedroom at the house, and I was always seeing my dad because me and my dad were doing what we do, and my brothers. I sit down with my brother, and my mom sits down. Now, at the time, we were going out with we were both my girlfriend's sister was going out with him. And he says, "You, he blamed me, or he thought I was messing with his girlfriend, which was which was like she's like my sister. Like he was paranoid." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then my mother really believed him at the time. This is before he had too many. Later on, we realized what it was, but and I'm like, "Nah." I was like, "Ma, and she started to believe, and we ended up getting it. And me and my brother didn't fight much, like physically. We had two fights in our life, and I remember one was back when we used to ride bikes everywhere, and we got in a big fight at McDonald's, and I punched him and gave him a black eye, and he hit me in the back of the head, and broke all his knuckles on my head. And then for pictures that year, he had a black eye in his pictures. But that was like the only like we did not fight physically. My father always said, blood is thicker than water. You look out for family. You never, you know what I mean? So, but it just pissed me off that my mother believed him, and it was so far fetched. And then he said, "Yeah, and I know you," and he mentioned a couple other people we hung out with, and you all triple teamed her, and it was just real crazy stuff. And it wasn't normal for that. It was weird. So we end up fighting. We went, right in front of my mother, and I think my mother got pushed, and it wasn't something I condone because my mother's everything to me. And that was the beginning of my brother's, I'll say, mental health issues. And I don't know if it was from that injury because it was, he had come home only a couple months prior from Berkshire, and then that situation happened with his head. And then only about a month later, that was only a couple weeks later, he started having paranoia. And that's just the beginning of it. I mean, it gets pretty wild. So, he's living home, and my brother ended up having right around that same time he started using cocaine, and he may have been using crack too. Crack cocaine. He eventually does. I don't know if at that time period if he was or not. By this time, I'm making a lot of money. I'm selling. I'm probably grabbing like 10 to 20 pounds every week, and I got a couple people. I wasn't dealing. I probably had a couple people buying pounds off me, but I was, half pounds, quarter pounds, pounds. But I remember by this time, I I had a good amount of money. I think the year prior and I remember I counted my first 100,000. By this time, I probably had 400,000 saved up. Now I didn't know exactly how much it was. I think a lot of people don't realize back then there was no Cash App, there was a lot more cash. You know what I mean? Now it's funny. Even now when I'm walking, I always use a card, and I never have cash on me. I want to go to tip somebody. It's like I can't even tip them, and it's like back then I had such an issue. What do I do with this money? Where do I hide it? And at this time, I had it hidden in a punching bag. So I had the punching bag. It was in the attic. So in my parents' house, they had like their bedroom, and then there was like this door, and this door is real important later when I get to my arrest. So this door, my mom had it set up where it looked like a window because she put like curtains on it. So if you walked in that room, you would just think the way everything was set up, you'd think it was a window. Unless you really took that, because she had like one of those things that go, what are they called? Um, it was curtains, and when you twist it like that and it opens up, blinds. She had a set of blinds, and then she had the curtains over it. So it looked like a window. And that was in her room. So in there, I went in there, and it was like our attic. It's above the garage. We had a lot of things stored there. And there was an old punching bag in there. And I pulled all the punching bag stuff out, and I stashed the money in there, put the punching bag stuff back in there. So one day I must have been putting money in there, and my brother saw me. And I had to have, I never, so a year prior, I had made my first 100,000. That was in 96. This is 97, a year later. And I was making a good amount of money. I was making probably, I don't know, I'd say 20,000 a week at that point in time. And, I was real, a lot of people call me cheap, but I was really good with my money. And I would watch people spend money. I never was. I was always thinking the future. I always thought, I'm going to make this amount of money. Always had $1 million on my mind. Once I make $1 million, I'm done. I'm going to use that, do the right thing, get legal. That was always my plan. So at this time, I'd say I had a 4, maybe it could have been 4, it could have been 5, could have been 6 for all I know. But it was a good amount of money, man. I had that in that the punching bag. I put money away one time. I think I remember when it was. And my brother was home. He must have saw me do it. About a week, so a couple days later, now he was having issues, man. He was saying weird stuff. He was just like incoherent things, like things that just didn't make sense. He was paranoid. That had been going on for a while. This was probably right around the end of the summer, just a couple months later, maybe even September. He disappears. Nobody knows where he is, and he has no money because love my brother, man. My brother, a lot of people would be uneasy around my brother. He's a bigger kid. He's probably like 6'4". He was always pretty big. I was skinny. I always got along with everybody. I mean, even in school, I never got in a lot of trouble in school. Had a lot of friends, got along with every group of people. I mean, if you talk to everybody I graduated with, they probably, from who I was in school to who I became, probably 2 different people. I like to say it's that, my alter ego, which everybody called me Rue. It was actually J. Rue, and then it was Rue, and I always say that was my alter ego. That's that guy that did that, and Jared's, you know what I mean? And he's we can't find him. We're worried about him. We're looking for him. And he was having crazy thoughts, and I go to my neighbor next door, this guy Phil, and Phil, I used to smoke weed. He was good friends with my dad. I'd sell him weed and shit. It's funny how many people you end up when that opens up to you. You find out, wow, everybody smoked weed. It was unreal the amount of people you meet and find out. But he said, "Yeah, I seen your brother." Because now he's gone for 3-4 days, but he's got no money. We didn't think he had any money. He says, "Yeah, he was up." Now, if my parents' house at the time, that garage that I was talking about, you can get into that through the window. He said, "I seen him with a ladder up there going through the window." I looked at him. I said, "When?" It's about 3 days ago. That's when he disappeared. I said, "I knew it. I fucking knew it, bro." Yo, I'll never forget that. Anyway, I go in the house. My heart's beating. I go in there. Everything looks fine. I unzip it. Not a fucking dollar. He took it all. Every single dollar. Gone. He didn't even leave nothing. Nothing, man. Oh my God, I remember that. That was tough, man.
I'm surprised he left you the bag.
Yeah. He The punching bag, you mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
what's
that's what it was. It was just it was all stuffed in there with in the punching bag. It was like, like a punching bag. And I took all the stuffing out.
yeah, but to transport the money, like, you didn't
I
wanna
don't
just
know. I
grab the
think,
whole thing?
well, later on, because a lot of people, how do you let that go? Oh, I'll get to that. Um, that was everything, dude. Like, he took everything. Like that, I had money in the at this time. Anytime I wouldn't put anything illegal in the bank. I knew better than that. But I would always put like anything from birthdays or anything legal. If I worked, or everything legal would go in the bank. I'd never spend a dollar. I was really good with money. People would say cheap, but it was like I would sacrifice. I was looking towards the future. I always thought like that. And like I told you before, I bring up like the kids having better sneakers and more clothes, and look, it wasn't like, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I was broke, but when you're around a lot of people that got more than you, it feels fucked up. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what planted the seed in my mind. And at that time, I don't want to go off track, but let me keep telling you this story, and I'll touch more on that. And so when I realized that, I remember calling my mom. I told her what happened, like, because we were trying to figure out where could he be, because she was really worried about him because of what was going on mentally, and he was getting into drugs, and he took all that and bounced. He came back. I don't know how long it was before he came back. I only dealt weed. I always said, when I got into that, was like, I'll never sell coke. I always said that'll bring the cops. Weed. And I remember that's when I first started, like, because he took everything, and I was just like, and I had dealt with I was starting to get, sell a lot of weed, man, and I knew a lot of people, and everybody did at that time. A lot of people were doing coke, hitting the clubs, and I remember I ended up dabbling in selling coke then too, and in my mind, I gotta make it back. I'm hustling overtime, and I was going against what I believed, because I didn't believe in selling that. And I still, I think it was wrong. I should have never did that, and which will lead to my arrest and going to prison. Um, so he ends up coming back. I had really planned to hurt him. And my mom begged me not to. I remember about a month and a half comes, and what's crazy is I really don't, to this day. I don't think I've just kind of let it go. Like, that's my brother, and I love him, and it is what it is, man. Like, um, it wasn't easy, and it's always in the back of your mind. But my mom, I had said to me and my boys, I was like, I'm gonna break a kneecap so he remembers it. Like, I really was gonna do that. And my mom begged me not to. Just, like I told you, my mom is all right. I couldn't, I had to do that for her, and I didn't. And he came back, he was at the house, and it was, I don't know, it was a tough situation. It was, he got into drugs real bad, and he says that he went down near the city, got in a, we were young too. You got to remember, he was 17 at the time. I was 18, maybe. We were in our teens, early teen or late teens, and he said that that he was in a hotel room, that he met people there, and somebody stole the money. And I'm just like, it probably is what happened. But I did end up finding some money, nothing of near what he took. But I remember finding a couple, like 3 Gs under the couch where he was staying in the back room, and he started getting really, like, he was getting high at that point. He ended up buying a Tech 9, he had this big fucking gun in the back. Just crazy shit, man. And he was losing his mind, and I was getting worried about my mother, because it was getting worse, along with so now he had this mental shit going on. He's using drugs. That shit don't, a lot of that, mixing that together, man, it's not a good thing. And so I'm doing my thing. I'm focused on making some this money back, and I met somebody else. I coming into this, I was gonna do my best to keep names out of it, just because my worry, or what I care about is, like, if I say this guy's name and he's got a kid who doesn't know and he hears that, I don't want to affect kids, youth, because I'm doing all this to build something to help people. Do you know what I mean? I'll just the guy who I was dealing with, who I ended up dealing with, his name was Lance. That's when I made my next step. My boy Stu introduced me to him. Stu was another good friend of mine was in the same lifestyle I was in, and he comes into play years later with my Fed case. But so he introduced me to this guy. That brought me to the next level. Now I'm getting, I he and I like it. I can't remember if he fronted it to me at first, but I'm getting 50 pounds at a time. So I'm getting it cheaper, I'm getting more, and that allowed me to, you know, so if let's say you're getting it from this guy at this price, now I can give it to you at this price, and now I'm getting more. I'm dealing with more people. So I'm making money even quicker. So this is right. This is late 97. So from 97, rest of 98, I'm selling coke, selling a lot of weed, and I made a lot of money in just that period. And what got me, uh, something about me is, like, when I do something, because I never meant to get that big, and I knew getting, starting to, when it starts to take off like that, I knew a matter of time, something was going to happen. I mean, if you go into that thinking you're never going to get arrested, then I think you're kidding yourself. You know what I mean? So I didn't want it. Of course, you don't want to get arrested, but even like when it came to me working out, I when I focus on something, I go, and I'll put everything in. I'm a workaholic and a perfectionist, and that just took off. And looking back, I always said to myself, why couldn't I just be okay with this? Or I didn't need to, get it, wish it could have just slowed down. And how do you or just stop? But I always say, and I would tell people, how do you stop making that type of money? How do you, literally, like, for me, it doesn't make sense. Even when I was warned from, people were warning me. Um, I'm trying to think, is there anything I missed leading up to that I wanted to share? So I'll get to my arrest then. So fast forward it now, I'm making a lot of money. Um, it's like, see, I got arrested in February on my father's birthday, February 5th, 99. So this is like, I remember that morning I got up, I get arrested, they raid my parents' house. Now, that week, I had just picked up 50 pounds. I had moved home I had got an apartment, and I got evicted because somebody kicked in the door, and the landlord flipped out. I ended up moving back to the house. I was only going to stay there a little bit. And I was worried about, I was also worried about my mom because my brother was acting low. You know, at this point, he was off the hook. So I moved home for a little bit. Remember, I took off that night or that morning, pulled up to where I got arrested, and I pulled in, got swarmed. Dude pulled me out, smashed me against the ground, and they arrested me. It was a Rotterdam police. I remember sitting in the holding cell, and one detective said, "You're in a lot of trouble, Jared." I was like, "All right, you know." Oh, I think he read me my, all my charges, and it was just, I remember the anxiety and everything hitting me. I was like, shoot, man. So I'm in the holding cell, or holding. They put me in like this little holding room. It looked like a closet, real small, no cameras, nothing. And I remember uh, the the detective that came in was a football coach, and he uh he started telling me, oh, about talking about football, and I was just like, look, man, no disrespect to you, but I want my lawyer. And oh, he got so pissed off, and he left. Should have been it. I was at that police station for 12 hours, maybe 12 hours. They would send in detective after detective after detective after detective. Now let me get to what happened. So when all that happened with my brother, um, I put a bunch of money in a safety deposit box, and we'll just say that it was in my mother's name. And for me, that was it was around $100,000, and that had been I my plan was if anything ever happens, that'll be there, and I if I ever have to run or something. Well, my brother must have knew about it or heard about it, and he was getting high, and I think he slipped up and said something in front of these guys, in front of this kid that ended up setting me up. So he knew about it. So what happened was there was a kid that came over to the kid that set me up's house, who was setting him up. So he would go there, and what's crazy is the kid came over there to buy like a half pound for $800, and my brother and another kid robbed him. Took the money, and it was the cops' money, and this is apparently what happened, and they didn't even care. They sent him there the next day, and and what's crazy to me is that nobody thought that was the kid shows up again. This kid's house. He called me a couple times. I had like 3 or 4 sales of the marijuana, and then I don't know if that's when they ended up arresting him, but the fourth time he calls me and says, at this point in time, I had stopped selling coke, I believe, and he said to me, "Yo, can you pick me up? Pick me up a half gram, like just for his head or whatever the case may be." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I got you, bro, I got you." And I remember going to get that for him, and what I put together later was, I think with just the weed sales, I doubt I would have even went to prison. You know what I mean? I didn't have any like I forgot to tell you with that whole situation with that felony that I got arrested for the kid's car. He didn't end up showing up for court, and it ended up getting dismissed. He ended up suing me, and I had to pay him like a couple thousand for his car. So that I never got convicted of that. I think it got thrown out. I think I pled with disorderly conduct. That's what happens a lot with it's, you got a fight or something like that. And I believe, by them charging me with that, when I bring that coke over, that's a criminal sale. That's a B felony under the old Rockefeller laws in New York, and you have to go to prison. There's no getting around that. So I had the one coke sale, and then the weed sales. Um, he I remember the detective said, they kept trying to get me to tell him that my mother put the money in the box and that my mother knew about it, and they were just hammering. I was like, no, no, no. That's all they were, and they would. So what they would do is, one would come in. I tell them I want my lawyer. Once you say that, they're not supposed to talk to you again. And there's no cameras back then. They could do whatever they want. And so they would send another guy in, and another guy in, and another guy in. It would always be a different guy, kind of like deniability. I that was my guess. And they kept wanting, they would question about that and where did I get my weed. And by this time, the dude, I told you the reason I bring that dude Jeff McGee up, he was arrested for he murdered a cop. Well, they apparently murdered a cop. He pled guilty to it. Was on America's Most Wanted. They raided his house, found guns and bazookas and vests, and they caught him in Canada. I think he's doing life in Georgia. But I hadn't dealt with him in years, and I think that's what because I'd been there 10 hours. They were asking me the same questions. I just wanted to. I could not. I remember being so relieved once I went to the county jail, so because I could just lay my head down, man. Like, because you're hit with, it's so dramatic, and then they're asking all these questions, and I just wanted to get out of there, man. And I remember saying to them, yeah, I got it from Jeff McGee, and they knew I was full of shit, and I'm just like, and finally they were like, they knew that it was a lost cause. I wasn't going to give them what they wanted. They put me in the county jail. I didn't have any bail. I ended up getting a lawyer, which a lot of people, had said his name. What I didn't know was that he was real friendly with these guys, with the Rotterdam police. If I was green. I didn't know much about law then. And I wish I got a different lawyer. You think, being that he worked with, because I think he was supposed to be a really good lawyer, but when I told him, so we hire him, he ended up getting a bail hearing, and my bail was like 100,000. My grandma bailed me out, and I remember her saying, "Jared, they must have the wrong guy," because she saw the one, like I told you, there was the one side of me, and she didn't see this other side. And my mom hid it from her. She didn't tell her much about that. And I remember her just thinking, like, I still got the letters she wrote me, and I remember reading those letters. And when I got sentenced, there was a school there, like kids watching, and she was like, "Oh, that was so awful that those students saw that." But that's later on. But I ended up getting bailed out, and they took $130,000. They took the car. They raided my house on my father's birthday. Now, remember when I told you about the room and it looked like a window? They knew about this too. This came out. They weren't happy. All right, I told you, I just picked up 50 pounds. So I had 40. I broke. So I would take 10 pounds at a time. I had broke that down. They found like, I think, a half pound left in my closet, another 30 something thousand in the closet, and I had another 40 pounds. Now this was brickweed. I don't know if anybody knows, like, the brickweed is like, they come in, a lot of it's from Mexico, and it comes in like a brick, and it's wrapped up. When you get it, it's wrapped up in cellophane, and then they put, a lot of times they'll put like coffee grinds around it. It's supposed to mess up the dog's nose. I don't know if it does or not, but it was still mostly wrapped up, and there's no heat in that attic. So it looks like a window. Now my dad said there was like 10, 12 cops in the house. The dog was in the house. They went through the house. He knew the weed was there. I knew the weed was there. And I remember sitting there like, oh, I'm just waiting for him to come in here, tell me about how much they just found. They never found it, bro. The dog was in there too. Like, they never found this shit. I mean, it sounds crazy. They did not find it. And I remember when I got bailed out. So, my dad ended up grabbing it and doing whatever, and he helped me out. And I told a couple of my close friends, "You're young, you're stupid, you're talking." Somehow that got back to the, detectives. I remember Couray, that was my lawyer. I didn't really wanna say his name, but whatever. His name was Steve Couray. He calls I think he called me or my mom or one of us. "What the hell? What?" And, uh, "Is this true? Was there a bunch of weed in there that they missed? Oh, they're all pissed off." And I'm just like, "Oh my god." That don't help, you know what I mean? Um, so yeah, that they missed that, and I don't think they were happy about that. I ended up getting a 2 to 6. They wanted me to get a 4 to 12. What came into play was the money that in the safety deposit box. Um, there was no proof that it was came from me. Um, so you when they take money from you, it always ends up I think the DEA takes it no matter what, and you have to put up 10% of whatever they take. So if they take 1,000,000, you'd have to put up 100,000 just to fight for it. And then if you lose whatever the court fees cost, you'd have to pay. So there's a whole process of fighting for money. So we went through some of that process and they found out. And part of my plea was that I forfeited that money, or my mother had to forfeit that money, and I forfeited the money in the closet, and that they would agree to 2 to 6. And I jumped on it because originally they wanted a 4 to 12. They didn't want me to get they and it's crazy when I look at my son. I was that age. I was 19 years old, and I'm thinking, how bad they did not want me to get shock. I thought I was gonna get shocked. They did not want me. You know what shock is?
Yeah,
You
like
ever
the boot camp type
Yeah.
program.
Now, and I'll get into that because they did send me there and how that works and stuff. Because that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to hear about. But I'll explain it. So I ended up pleading to a 2 to 6. As long as I forfeit the money, I forfeit my car, and some other things they took, and my mother forfeits that 100,000. That was the big deal because they called him right up when they saw that I put in I was he had showed him, look, I'm about to file this. Okay, wait, and I think they were worried that we might get the money back. I don't want to get into why, but there was reasons, and I got a 2 to 6. So now what there's I'm gonna back up a little, and the reason I told you about my brother and I told you, my goal is to, coming on here and telling my story is to build something where I can help, whether it's people, whether it's youth, troubled kids, PTSD, mental health, addiction, anything that has to do with crime in prison. And, we've looked into maybe starting on a podcast. And I've already talked to a couple people who would be willing to come on, and one is a ex. He was in combat. He has PTSD, and he really I mean, he's looking forward to it. Another has to do with mental health. My brother wanted to come on mental health. He's been to prison, and I just think by telling these stories, the information, you know, uh, connecting people with people that can help or answer questions is just something I think to give back, man. You know what I mean? Because I spent so much of my time, breaking the law, living a lifestyle that was harmful to others that I want to give back. And I take religion and my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ very serious. And I think it's something that He would want me to do. So, with that said, my brother, while I was out on bail, and this is where this is hard, man, because you asked how my mother felt about my father, and like I don't think there was much she could do. And my father hasn't, my father, he ain't perfect, but he was, but he ain't a bad guy either. And I think when my mom married my father, she knew who he was, and that just comes with it. And But what she had to deal with between me, my brother, and my father, I don't know how she did it, man. Like, that shit kills me, man. So, I'm out on bail. And, I'm sleeping. I remember I had got a job at Goal Up. It's, you ever Price Choppers around here?
I don't think so.
No,
No.
Price Choppers like Hannaford's? No,
No, it's more like New York.
what
Yeah,
do you
I've
got?
heard of them though.
Like, it's a grocery
Yeah,
store.
yeah, I know what they are. Yeah.
Right by where we live is a big Goal Up that supplies all the Price Choppers, and there's a ton of them in New York and the surrounding areas. And I got a job there, and I remember, I think I was working, I don't know, I got home and I was taking a nap, and I wake up to a bag of money. What the fuck? I look up, and it's this kid that hangs around my brother. I don't want to say his name. I don't know. I know. I'm gonna just keep his name out of it. It was a kid. It was my brother's co-defendant. And I'm looking at it, and then I realize it's got the bands around it from a bank, and I'm like, the fuck? And he's like, yeah, you know what it is. You know what it is. And I'm like, yo. So it had to be, I think it was like 30, 40 grand. I'm like, yo. So now I'm getting up, I'm getting dressed. My father's there. And they, like I told you, a lot of people were comfortable with him and stuff. There's a couple other people there. And I'm like, yo. And he's like, yo, they turn the news on. Fucking bank got robbed. Trustco Bank. I'm like, what the fuck? And they're talking about it. Dude, about 6'4", ran in, had lipstick on, sunglasses, a wig, and like made a threat about a bomb, took off with the money. I'm like, yo. So now my brother's not telling me he did it, but I'm not stupid, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just like trying to comprehend this. Now, in my case, uh there was rumors that there was a lot more money and that there was money buried and stuff. So, I mean, just that is what it is, right? So I said to them, like, yo, I don't like, I'm like, what do you guys, what's up? That money might buy. So I ended up helping them out, and I gave them some money, and I ended up burying that. I literally buried that. And they went about their business, man. So we knew what, I not too, so so that happens. They don't get caught right away. But the kid he did it was stupid and running around with his car. And one thing led to another. And about 2 or 3 months later, my brother gets arrested for robbing a bank. So I'm out in bail for that. He gets arrested. We get him bailed out. I helped that happen. And he ended up getting a 2 1/3 to 7. And I don't want to get into so much of it because I plan on having, when I'm in the process of trying to get this podcast together, and I wanted him to be my first guest. I wanted to get a little bit more into what happened with him, his mental health issues, his addiction issues. He's been sober now for 13 years, and I'm super proud of him, man. And because it was rough, man. He's been through some rough thing, and you using on top of that makes it worse. But I'm proud of him, man. And that was rough on my mom. So that blew up. That was all over the news. He gets out on bail. I'm out on bail. I ended up getting sentenced. I think it was September. No, it was October. It's in October. Now, at this point in time, I'm thinking I'm getting shock. He ends up, now, he was originally arrested for first degree because he got the same lawyer I did, and this dude he did pretty good with him. So what happened with him was he ends up getting arrested for first degree robbery. They indict him on second, and then he puts a motion in because he made an indirect threat instead of saying I'm gonna. He kind of the idea was he went in there and was like, they're gonna blow us up if you don't give me the money. He was trying to, and he was dressed up like a girl. Like he had a wig on and sunglasses, and I guess the idea was like someone made him go in there, and by him saying they instead of saying I'll blow you up, it's an indirect threat and doesn't constitute second degree, and that makes it third degree, which is nonviolent and a lot lighter sentence because you're talking 2 1/3 to 7 is a D felony, 5 to 15 is a C. So he ends up with a 2 1/3 to 7. Um, I think he had a couple other charges, so they let him plead at 2 1/3 to 7. But the C felony got, you know what I mean, got dismissed. And so I got locked up first. At this point, he was before that happened. Oh man, I wonder if I should let. He had I'm gonna save that story for him.
I would just focus on your story.
Okay, let's focus on
focus on
you.
yours.
You got it. You got it. I just if I ever go off course, just direct me, man, because I get
the audience wants to hear your story.
Okay, so I end up getting locked up. I get the 2 to 6. I think I'm going to shock, and I get in the county, and when you get sentenced when you're out in bail, you don't spend much time in the county. A lot of people, if they don't get, if you don't get bail, you're stuck in the county. So I got sentenced right away. I got sentenced, turned right there, turned myself in. The county courthouse is connected right to the county jail. So they take you right there and walk you through this tunnel. Boom. So I'm in there. Now I have never, at this point, I'd never really done time. When I first got arrested, I was in there for 2 weeks, got bailed out, and now, I'm 19 years old, 20 years old, green, don't know nothing about bidding, man. Now, a lot of the dudes, when I told you, right around 15, when I started hanging around the other people, different crew of guys, they all got locked up. And that's when I kind of said, look, man, because they were into burglaries and stuff. So I saw them all get locked up, all end up on parole, all on paper. I'm talking about every single one of them got a charge, got caught up. They were doing a lot of burglaries and stuff. And I knew that ain't the way, man. And so I started, that's why I got into, the weed thing, my father. And so I kind of knew what to expect because they all had been in, the county and stuff. But I wasn't there long, went right upstate. So I got sent to Ulster. And I remember, because I was younger, writing rhymes and stuff. And I had I wrote this little rhyme. I told Land about it, and it was just another number in Tims and Greens, locked down with thieves, drug dealers and fiends, with similar schemes and dreams to get cream, and thugged out war stories experienced on the street. And that just wraps up what you get in there, all right? They hand you, well, first, so you get in Ulster, and when I drove down there, it happened to be the guy driving me down was a friend of my father, grew up with my father. And he was like, yo, Callahan? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I know your dad. He knows my mom too. I mean, he was like, I see him to this day. He's a good guy, man. And he's like, and he had heard about my case was really publicized, so he had heard about it and stuff. And I remember when I got in there and I heard him say that he's like, yo, B, I know this guy, I know his father, take it easy on him. Because when you get in there, they're trying to intimidate you. They're loud, they're screaming. And the dude he was kind of cool to me. And I heard him screaming on the other dude. Not like shock, but they're letting you know they don't fuck around, And you got to strip. So they got every county you can think of is lined up. Like, dude, you're holding a thing that says Schenectady. And they got Dutchess County and Ulster County and what are some of the other ones? Columbia. Every county is lined up. There'll be there was like 2 of us. There was like 3 of this county, 3 that we're all lined up now. Like, strip. Everybody's kind of like, let's go, motherfuckers. So everybody's taking. Now we're all standing. I mean, ass cheek to ass cheek to ass cheek, butt naked. I mean, it's a wake up call, man. Like, this is what it is, man. And there's a shower heads. There's like 10 shower heads. And they hand you this. It's a cup of like, it looks like syrup. And that's like to kill lice. And they hand you that. And it's cold. That water's not warm, man. I'll never forget that. And they pour it on your head, rub it in, and there's some guys are just rub it in. So everybody's rubbing it in. You're real quick, and you're going from shower to shower as you're doing it. Shower. Half the suds are still hanging off you. You're still wet. Everybody's dicks are hanging out. And now now they got you going to the. I think they give you your underwear. They give you underwear. Then they give you your greens. I can't remember when they have you cut your hair. If they have you cut your hair, then they give your underwear greens, but they can't do that naked. So it's something like that. There's a line of it, and either they cut your hair, then you do the shower, and then you give your greens, you get dressed. But they have you're like cattle, man, and that's when they shave you. Everybody, it doesn't matter. The only guys that don't get shaved is like if you got a religion like a Rasta religion and you got proof. You can't just say you're Rasta. Otherwise, they're shaving that off. And I remember getting everything and I get dressed and they give you like a bag. So you got your state boots, your state coat, your number, your year. I think what else did they give you? That's pretty much everything. Underwear, boots, coat, number, year, pants. Oh, and the sneakers, they give you those real cheap, like, they look like Converse. And they suck, man. They're horrible. And the boots are stiff and hurt. I remember weighing in, I was 138 pounds. I was a skinny kid, man. And I was young. And you saw them pictures. I looked young, bro. I was a young looking kid. I was, but and I think that's why I had that little complex of being tough, having to always be tough. And it was the 90s. 90s were, it was all gangster music and it was all about being tough and respect. And it was a different time, man. And so I remember getting in there, a lot of kids my age, a lot of younger kids. But back then, I don't know how it works now. They had like a lot of, like everybody would talk about Green Correctional Facility and Washington. And I believe one of them, a lot of the blood, like at this time, man, I don't know if you, like, because I've listened. There's not many guys that were from New York State Prison on your podcast, but at that time it was They called it Gladiator School, and I caught the ass end of it. Like it wasn't as bad as when I came in, but it was still pretty. But during the 90s, there was a lot going on with like the Bloods and the Latin Kings were at war. Yeah, and dudes, you ever heard of a $150?
Yeah.
Where you get and I can remember, man, getting in there and going and walking through reception, and they got you like walking through the line and just seeing, and it would be like every third dude had a scar. Every third, this guy walked with scar on his face, scar on his face, scar on his face. It was very common, and it was still kind of wild then. But what they ended up doing was it got so bad then, and this was when New York State, there's 72 New York State prisons. At this point in time, wasn't yet. It was like a year into my bid. New York State hit 100,000 inmates. It's the most it's ever been. It's never been that much since. I had just missed when I caught my bid. There was no way of getting out of it. If you had unless you snitched, if you had a coke sale, you're going to prison. You can look it up at the penal law. There was no way to get around that. You're going to prison. You might get shocked if you get, as long as you could get 3 to life. Like let's say you got caught with like a ounce or more. I think at that time under the Rockefeller laws, you could get there was an A2 and an A1 felony, but an A2 you could get 3 to life. You could still get shock. So you could get 3 to life and get shock and be home in 6 months. It usually was more because you'd be in the county and it takes time to get in there. But once you started shock, that's a 6-month program. So it usually was 8 months, 9 months, depending on how long, whatever your county stay was plus the 6 months. There was no drug court yet. because I don't know if you've heard of drug court, but in New York State it became, so what ends up happening is Pataki was the governor at the time, because you got your Patakis on, that was your, like, state shoes. And the inmate population hit 100,000, and at the same time, that's when smoking. And I remember when I first got in there, you could smoke, and I hate smoke. I've never smoked, and I'm talking about cigarettes. But like when you first get in there, you're getting a top bunk, and I went to a medium, and in the mediums, you had 90 the cookie cutters. Now there's a lot. You have 72 state prisons. I'd say half of those are cookie cutters, and what I mean by that is they all look the same. They're like this 90. They look like a house, right? And then it's just got the rooftop, and it's cut in half. And that'd be A dorm. So you got A, B, A. So you got A1 and A2, right? And the next one would be B, B1, B2. Next one would be C, C1, C2, and there might be up to H, J, M, depending how big the place is. So if all one sides would go to rec for like an hour, and then the next would be movement. Then it'd be the B. Then two side would go to rec. It was never together unless you were in the honor dorm. You could go to both. Yeah. And I'll get to that because I ended up in the honor dorm at the end of my bid, because I was so into working out. So Ulster was like the cookie cutters, and at the same time, so half of the prisons, they had 90-man dorms. They passed a law that they had to get rid of. So in that 90-man dorm, so there'd be 90 on this side, 90 on that side. There'd be 180 inmates in each one of those housing units, right? And all the movement would be outside. It was like a cul-de-sac. And then at the end would be the mess hall, right? I'm telling you all this because there's so much more to tell you. Like in certain spots, it's a mile walk. Like you got to walk a mile to mess hall. And like Franklin was like that. Wyoming, when I did my violation, that if you're in the back, that's almost a mile to the mess hall. They got rid of the middle, so they would have, like, you know how you got your bunk, so you have bunks all the way down the wall, and then in the middle you got them head to head. There'd be a wall in the middle, and then bunks all the way down the middle, and then bunks all the way against that wall, and that'd be 90 men. They passed a law that's too many guys in one bunk or one unit, that they had to get rid of all the bunks in the middle, so it made it 60. But at the same time, the inmate population was higher than it's ever been, and the prisons were overpopulated. So they had to figure something out. And this is when stuff started changing. At that same point in time, drug court came about. They made it easier to get shock and work release, which I'll get into why I got disqualified. And then drug court came about. So that was an alternative to like someone like me, first time I may have got it, but maybe not because of how the money part of it and how I was if you had just a sale and you were just, you were using and they'd definitely give you drug court. In my case, I could be arguable whether I would have got it or not, but I was a first time felon and most likely would have got it. So anyway, I just wanted to describe all that, which I thought was a pretty cool to know. So I was in Ulster. I ended up getting sent to, now I'm when you would have a shock, so to be shock eligible, you had to have a 3. Back, they changed the way they sentenced you. So if you were a first time felon, we'll say it's an E felony, you get a 1 to 3. If it's a second time felon on E felony, you would get a 1.5 to 3. So the first number would be 1/3 of the last number. A second time felon, the first number would be half of that last number. You see what I'm saying? So I was a first time felon, 2 to 6. See how that's the 1/3? Now, if it was my second felony, I would have got a 3 to 6. You see what I'm saying? So I'm trying to, why did I even tell you that? But I mean, that's how the sentencing goes. Now, so being a first time felon, non-violent, and my first number was 3 or smaller, I was automatically qualified for shock. So what they do is they'll send you to shock, and shock is like they send everybody to Lakeview Annex. That's the reception for shock, but it looks just like a prison. There's nothing different about it, and if you can now you go there once, that's when they start digging into everything else. They dig into your medical history, they dig into your mental history, they dig into how like certain like health, and if you could just like if you had like a health issue that would disqualify you, but they do that there. So if you have, so like I said, if you have all the nonviolent crime, you're eligible from your bid, which is 3 or less on the first number, and you're under 40 years old, you automatically get sent there. So I got sent there. That was a crazy story because I was in Ulster. I get in there, I get my number and everything. I'm there for 2 weeks. The night before we leave, they served goulash, man, and I'll never forget this. And I got cool with this one kid. He was a blood kid. He was cool as hell. We just were same age, and you get talking because everybody's like, it's a new thing, or younger. It's first, a lot of us are first time, and by the number, and he was like, I'm not eating this. I took second servings. And I remember that night, I'm sitting on there, and I had just got commissary, which was stupid because we could have been moved anytime. And I remember giving away half of it because I was like so sick because we got packed up, and then I got it and I couldn't take it with me. So I had to give some of it away. Now I couldn't even eat it because my stomach's rumbling. I don't feel right. I ended up about 2 in the morning. I remember jumping off the bunk, and there was a kid on the lower bunk that I was cool with too because we had all like us. There was a group of us. We're all around the same age. We're all talking. I jump off the bunk. I remember he jumps out of his bed. I startled him. I'm puking. I'm on the toilet. I must have got food poisoning. Now we're packed up. I don't have none of my stuff. We're leaving in the morning. They get you around 6 in the morning. And I'm like, this is crazy, right? So I remember I must have went to the toilet 3 times that night. And then so now they're calling us to get us movement. And I remember going on the toilet and just pushing, bro, and it's coming out of me like pee. And I'm thinking, this is going to be bad. Because I know New York's big, man. And Ulster's down this way. And we're going to up near Buffalo. So that's an 8-hour ride, okay? And they do back roads because they don't, they always do some weird shit. And what I didn't know is they had to stop somewhere. That ended up being 16 hours in that bus. And they had me shackled to this dude. And I feel bad for this dude, bro. I was hurting, man. So I remember getting on it. Like I told you, I'm just trying to squeeze everything out because I don't want to shit my pants. I know it's crazy, but I'm just being 100. So I'm on this bus. I'm shackled to this dude. It's Christmas time. I remember seeing Christmas lights and being sick to my stomach. I love Christmas, man. And what I forgot to tell you was I just found out that my girlfriend was pregnant with my first son, Kai. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll be home, before she didn't tell me. She didn't want me to stress. Like she got pregnant, was out on bail. And so I'm thinking, all right, I'll be home. I just found this out. So I'm kind of like, oh my God, but I'm excited to. And it's Christmas time, and it just, and we're going to, we're on our way to Lakeview, and we stopped at Summit. It was called. That was another. So they have a lot of these shock don't have fences and stuff. I think you said you were in like a minimum, right?
Yeah, at a camp.
Yeah, same idea, and everything, and. I remember that's where everybody wants to go. But at my age, I wasn't going. I was under 21. I was going to be in Lakeview. And I was getting into telling you that my age at the time, they were sending a lot of like the adolescents. And a lot of people talked about, you don't want to go to Washington or Green because a lot of there was a lot of Bloods and a lot of gang going on there and a lot of younger kids. So there's a lot more violence when you're dealing with younger kids and adolescents. And I was 19, so I just missed that cutoff. And we end up in that ride ended up being 16 hours. I remember we sat at the Summit We sat there for it was an 8-hour drive. We sat there for like 6 to 8 hours, just sitting in that van and being shackled to this guy. And I remember my guts going, man. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to hold it in. And I know I'm gonna fart, right? Yo, I know it's coming, man. But you ever been in a plane and how the like air is getting sucked out? I know this is a crazy story. I gotta tell you though, because this shit was funny as hell, bro. And so I know I can feel like the air is getting sucked out, so it would suck in here and probably blow out somewhere else. And I'm like trying not, and I fart, and I hear the dude up near the front. Yo, man, you fucking smell, man. Yo, and he's talking to his thing. He's like, yo, it ain't me. And everybody, and I'm thinking, nah, that can't be from me. And then in a little while, it happened again. Same thing happened. I'm thinking, holy shit, man, this dude, every time I fart, it's getting sucked out and it's blowing this dude. But which I thought was just funny, man. But I guess it ain't funny. It's kind of fucked up. But just a funny side note. So anyway, we end up getting to everybody talks about when you get to shock, they're gonna try to sun you and they're gonna talk shit and try to scare you, intimidate you just to get you ready. Well, they weren't supposed it wasn't supposed to be a 16-hour drive. I guess something happened to the bus. We were supposed to change buses. Something happened, something went wrong. We got there 2 in the morning. And the CEO was like, "Yo," you even said to us, "We usually give you the spiel. We just want to get you in, get you in here, get you into bed. You guys are lucky." And they did. They weren't too hard on us. Got us in there, and so it begins. So I'm thinking I'm going to shock, So and they don't. So when you're waiting to get into the real shock, they're giving it to you like you got to sit a certain way in the mess hall. You got to eat everything on your plate. And some of these dudes that are working the mess hall, they will purposely give you too much food because they know what's going to happen to you. Dudes are just, they're playing jokes on you, man. Like, and you'll see dudes think it's great, and then they got it now. They'll make, if you don't eat everything, they literally make you put it in your pocket and carry it around. It's definitely it's a different place, man. And I ended up getting denied. I think I was there about a week or whatever, and because of assault charge, I think that's what I might have pled to with that situation with my brother in that car, and I had got an assault, and I got denied, and I was just like, and from what I read, like, I don't know, there was like, I was trying to debate it and it wasn't happening, and because I when I pled to that, I got it sealed, and somehow they saw it anyway, and it never really got sealed because my lawyer ended up, my peoples ended up calling them like, yo, and this, and he said, yeah, they didn't seal it for some reason, and I got disqualified, and I was just like crushed because I already had my mind like, oh, I gotta just do this. And so they sent me to the shock annex. And I remember because I was there when the ball dropped. And that was when everybody thought that the computers would go wacky, right? In 2000. So I remember, and right then I got because you could get the tapes, you'd have a tape cassette and you can get tapes sent in. And I had Dr. Dre 2001 sent in. Everybody wanted to hear that. And I remember getting that, man. I was so happy just to sit down and hear new music. I mean, that was like the highlight of your life. And and annexes are like just like a holding spot. It's not somewhere you're gonna do a bid. So it's not, you don't got like what you would get at a regular prison, which is so much better, weights and movement. And so I'm in there. I remember they took the clocks off the wall so we wouldn't know when the ball dropped because they were worried about shit going crazy. Do you remember the 2000 bug they said it was going to happen?
I mean, I was 5 years old.
Yeah, I know. But did you ever hear about it? That's what they thought would happen. Gotcha. So we didn't even know when the ball dropped or anything. They were we didn't even know what time it was. And there was a lot of snow up there, man. You're out there near the Great Lakes, and it's just, and I don't know if you realize this, but in New York, majority of the prisons are upstate New York. And that's a big deal because you got to think, right? And they do that for a reason. I don't want to get into that whole conspiracy, but there's reasons why they put those prisons out there. Whole towns are built off that. And so you get, And I'll tell you, that was the biggest difference I saw in like this, the state and federal is the way the COs treat you. Up there, you got a lot of you got a lot of guys that just have never been around. I mean, they don't, alls they know are inmates, right? And they're mostly white and they live up north. So, and they're dealing with a majority of minorities that have been in trouble. So you see what I'm saying? You get a lot of disrespect, and they're very disrespectful up there. And I mean, even when you're I need toilet paper. What do you want me to do about it? And you know what I'm saying? That is, and that's not every one of them. I've met some good some COs that were, they would treat you like a human being, but for the most part, you didn't get treated very well. And, I think it has a lot to do with where these are located and the type of people that you're dealing with who aren't around a lot of cities or minorities. So you get a lot of isolated, you know what I'm saying? And anyway, so I ended up getting sent to, I was in Lakeview Annex. I ended up, they transfer you all over the place. And I ended up getting sent to downstate. I was there for a little bit. I went to Auburn. I went to a couple more spots. I can't even remember where I went to. But I would spend I remember when I went to Auburn, that place was, Auburn's really old. It's a max. And I remember being on the bottom tier, and I mean, I remember thinking to myself, you see roaches running down. They had windows, it looked like a warehouse. Like when you looked out the cell bars, we were looking at a wall and there was windows, and some of the windows were broken out and there's birds flying in and out. And I'm thinking, it reminded me of around the corner would be like demons throwing coal in a fire. You know what I mean? It was like that setting. It was just, I couldn't imagine doing my bit in that place. But I ended up going to Lakeview. Not Lakeview, uh, Riverview. Riverview was, so that I was in that hub. Riverview, I think it's Riverview, Cape Vincent, Ogdensburg, because they got hubs in New York. So you'll get like the Mohawk hub will be like Marcy, Oneida, and there's a couple more, and then maybe Gowanda. I don't even know if some of these got shut down, but the one I went to was Riverview, and there's Cape Vincent, Ogdensburg, Watertown. I stopped in Watertown, and then I was in for a little bit, and that's like an old army base. It's all blue, and then I end up in Riverview. Now I'm in Riverview, and I'm 138 pounds. I'm green, bro. I don't know how to bid, and at that point in time, like I was telling you, when I was coming up in school, we were like the first grade. We started listening to hip hop. We were like the first kids in my school to wear starter coats and dress like hip hopish. You know what I mean? And a lot of people didn't like that. I mean, we got in fights over that and stereotyped over that. I wore big baggy jeans. I sagged my pants. I wore Timbs. That's the that's how we dressed. Everybody I hung out with, and we were kind of like the first grade to start doing that, I would say. And where was I going with that? I'm sorry, man. I lost my train of thought. But oh, and a lot of people call us wiggers. You know what I mean? And rightfully so. I get it. That became a little issue. I didn't have many problems in prison, right? I learned real quick how to bid, man. And there's a way to bid and there's a way not to bid. And I get it. So I get into the Riverview, and luckily I got in a dorm. And now the biggest difference and I'll get into this with the Fed time and state time. State, there's not a lot of white dudes at all. And I think in the first dorm I was in, there happened to be, I remember there was these three kids. People probably will know who this guy is too. Frank White. He was a white Latin king. That's why he's pretty well known. I mean, dudes my age going back a ways. And then there was this kid Mikey and Horace, and they kind of like took me in. You know what I mean? I was younger than them, and I remember the dude. And this was the shock to me, and something that bothered me was like in the state, and this wasn't like this in the feds. There's a reason for it, and I'll get to that. And it's because of being in cars, but there's no cars in the state. All right, and in the state, it's everybody's pretty much New York, and you got upstate, you got city dudes, but it's very segregated, and this is the one thing that kind of bothered me because there was a dude there from Schenectady that I got cool with, and I ate with him, I broke bread with him, and that became an issue because he was black, and that was it didn't, and these guys told me like, man, like, listen, bro, like, we'll look out for you, but you got to listen to what we're telling you. Like, you can't do that here. It's just the way it is, man. It was hard for me to accept that, and it ended up being a little bit of an issue. That kid's name, he ended up getting killed in Schenectady. His name was Spider. I ended up seeing him later on in life and stuff, and um, but anyway, so that was the one issue I had. When I got cool with the dude, Frank Way, he was a Latin king. He introduced me to this kid, King Toro, and I got cool with Toro. Now Toro ends up getting moved. That's why I kind of, I started working out, and because they had like they had nice weights in the state, right? Do you remember them white bubbles? Riverview had like a bubble. It looks like a big white balloon, and it has all weights in there. It was not. I mean, it was nicer than some gyms. And I started working out, man. And I started reading everything I could about working out and eating, and I just realized I was never eating enough, and how much protein I needed. And I'm eating all 3 meals. Um, I was eating with these guys. We're throwing in together. So I was there about 2 months, and I had to take. There was a program there. What was it called? Was it RDAP or is that the feds?
RDAP is the feds.
What? Oh no, KSAC. KSAC. KSAC is, yeah, RDAP's the feds. KSAC is the state. So I had to take KSAC. They didn't have it there, so I got moved. I was there about 2 months, and then I get moved. Look, it was just a coincidence that I ended up getting moved right in there, and Toro was in the dorm I was in, and he took me, yo, eat with us. So I'd throw in with him and a couple dudes. There was like 2 Dominican dudes, Toro, me, and I would just throw my share in. They would cook, and they cook good. They taught me how to cook. And to this day, I can cook up something nice with like we were eating good, man. Like that, some people don't realize how good you can eat in there if you got the right stuff. Got a hook up in the kitchen and stuff. And I worked out, I ate, and I got pretty. I came home. I went upstate 138 pounds. I came home 225 pounds.
How much time did you end up doing in the state?
18 months.
18 months.
Because you get so I went to my merit board, they call it. So I had a 2 to 6, and I forget how they calculate it, but they give you like 2 months. They do give you like a merit board, and I didn't think I was gonna make it. I remember going there, so I did everything I was supposed to. I did the KSAC. I don't think it's KSAC. KSAC's when you go home. It's a drug program in the state. I can't believe I can't remember it. Was it KSAC? Anyway, I did that program, and then I hadn't got any tickets because, like I told you, I focused on working out, and that was it. And my son Kai was born while I was in there, and
how old were you when you got out?
I was 21 or 22, just turned 22.
And what was your plan?
I just to stay out of trouble, man. I ended up doing pretty well. I ended up going to the honor dorm, worked out, got out, or no, went. I wanted to tell you this part. I went to my merit board, and I didn't think I was gonna make it because they said to me, they asked me about money being buried. I told them they got all my money, man. I thought for sure they weren't gonna let me out, and then they did. I made it, and I ended up going home. Um, I got a job right away. Uh, you know, my kid's mother is the best and didn't put no pressure on me. I went home to my parents' house. Parole was tough, man. Like I ended up getting a job at Rent a Center out of all places. And back then they didn't hire felons, but my boy was working there. He's in one of the pictures I showed you. And he's like, dude, just come, we'll see what happens. And what happened at that point in time, they didn't do the background check. So I got the job. And like I told you, that the money was such an issue that this guy's name was Jack Ray. And everybody knows him around Schenectady. So I'm in there, and my boss doesn't know about my my background, and I didn't tell him, but I had already been an asset to the company. I did really well, and I remember when Jack came in there with his badge out and his gun. He's a big dude. He's like, "Hey, Callahan, come here." I'm like, "This fucking guy, what?" And my boss had seen it, and by then he didn't care. I had told him the truth, and fast forward real quick, I uh, I ended up getting promoted and taking over the store. It was good money. I was making about 80 grand a year there with the bonuses, and I got store of the region. I went out to celebrate, and I got drunk, and I got in a fight, and I got arrested for an assault charge. And he didn't even violate because I had been doing well. I'd been out almost 2 years. He didn't violate me. He said, "Look, just go. Go when you first get out. They make you get into whenever you have drugs on any type of drug sale or anything. They make you do a drug program when you get out, like an outpatient. Maybe do that." And I had already did it when I got out, but he made me do it again. So I did it. And everything was going fine. And he came into my work and said, "I gotta violate you, man." And I'm like, and I knew if I got violated, I wouldn't be able to get back into this job because there was a guy that had the store in Amsterdam who had left. He had charges. He left, and when he came back, they wouldn't give him the job because his background came up. So I didn't get to. I ended up getting violated, and I knew that I wouldn't that job wouldn't be there, and I was very, very bitter over that because the charges end up getting dropped. It's weird how it works when you get violated because he ended up violating me for being out after curfew, so I couldn't fight that, and I got violated. I ended up getting a 90-day violation, which only starts once you cop to the violation. So I had been in there for like a month or two, copped to the violation, and then I went to Wyoming and I did another 90 days there. That's where it's like a mile and a half to Chow. And I ended up getting lucky and getting pulled up to one of the dorms that are right next to it was the outside clearance dorm, and it's right next to where everybody eats. Got real lucky. Anyway, I did my 90 days. I came home very bitter, and it was my own fault, but I kind of looked at it like, why, I end up getting in my mind, it was more like I got violated, uh, and it makes no sense. Like you took me from a job, and I blamed others for my actions. I still wasn't, thinking back on I was wrong, and I got right back into selling weed. So I came home. I was very bitter. I basically blamed my parole officer. And I know today I'm wrong. It was my fault, my actions. And I had right from my violation, knowing that I couldn't get that job back, had it. My plan was to go, and I only had about, I I think I had a year and a half left on parole at the time. This is 2004. Uh, what I didn't mention, when I was on my violation, the guy I was getting my weed from, because he never got arrested. I didn't snitch on him. I didn't say nothing, never mentioned his name. His name was Lance. He had got murdered. And, but I still had, I had plans to just get right back into it. Kai was, my son Kai. That was the other thing. That was, I remember getting my violation, and now I have a son, so that hurt a little bit. That violation stung more than my first bid because, I, even though he was born when I was locked up, I didn't have a kid. So now I think I started right off with, getting, I think I went and got 10 pounds right off the rip. And I was staying at my girlfriend's house. And I remember being in the bathroom. It was, now this is when beasters were coming in. I don't know if you were familiar with beasters, but beasters are, it's a weed that comes from Canada. And, it's like really round. It smells kind of like cheese. There's no seeds. But I ended up getting 10 pounds of like some good, it was like, it was good middies. And I remember the dude told me to, he was like, "Yo, turn on the shower, let the steam go. It'll help like puff it up and make it a little bit more moist because it's real dry." So I'm doing that, right? I'm in there, I'm playing around with it. It's 10 pounds. I got it in like this tote, and I hear ding dong. What the fuck? Who's that? I hear doo 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 doo. Now I've only been home a couple weeks. Callahan. I'm like, oh fuck, it's Jack Ray, man. I got this weed right here. I got 10 pounds. I'm like freaking out. So I remember my heart beating. I'm sitting there. I'm not saying a word. And he left. I was like, holy shit. Anyway, I remember I was like, I can't keep this up here. I remember bringing it, and I would be down in the cellar, and I would do it down in the cellar. And I remember I started dealing that, and I was just like, you know what? I'm learned from last time. I'm just gonna make enough to uh, I'm not gonna go gun ho. I'm gonna be. I always said slow and steady wins the race. So I'm gonna take it slow, and that just never happens with me, man. I'm always like, I go and I go and I go, and I got to be bigger, better, and faster, and that's just the way it works, man. And one thing led to another. I ended up. What happened was that I remember I'm just doing that. I'm selling ounces and I'm breaking down pounds. And this guy got busted who was like a big dealer around the way. And he was supplying everybody with the beasters. When that happened, remember I mentioned my boy Stu. He had come to me. He's like, "Yo, bro, there's an opportunity here, man." And I'm like, he's like, "Look, I know somebody. We can go see him. Blah 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 blah." And I was like, "All right, what's up?" So we took a ride up to Syracuse. I think with the first trip we took, we got because I still had some cash, and I think we bought 25. I don't know, 20, somewhere around that pounds. And that shit was gone before we got home. Like we were making call with that, it was gone before we got home. Flipped that, went right back up. We got more, and then eventually, not too long after that, we were getting anywhere from 50 to 100 pounds brought to us, and that just set the stage for what it led to. And for a long time, me and him were, we had done our thing together. Um, during that time, you start meeting people and you hear who's doing what. I got into that before, so who some of the players are. And there goes my mind again. If I can get the right price, if I can get enough, I can go to him and get him and get him. And that's what I did, man. And before you know it, we had it locked, man. Everybody was getting weed from us, and and that's when I saw money like I had never seen, you know? And, I think it was about how many months it took. I ended up getting a store. I had a clothing store. I was still on, I was still on parole, but I was, um, I was about to max out, and my brother had did his time and came home, and he had gotten to I don't know if he had violated parole and didn't report. So I went to report. I only had 2 months left, right? I go to and I'm selling a lot of weed at the time, but what I didn't know is that, they already knew what was going on. I had a a weed sale from, like, a year prior for, like, an ounce of weed, and someone had warned me, some kid had set me up for an ounce of weed, and I cut him off, changed my number, and it never led to nothing. Now, just remember that's sitting there. I go to now the and my parole officer must have known this because he said to me, he goes, "What you're doing now is gonna bite you in your ass later." I remember him saying that to me, and I didn't I remember why the hell did he say that? But he said, "You need to get your brother in here." I'm like, he's like, "What's your brother? Where is he? I know you know where he is." I'm like, "Look, I don't know, man." And he's like, "Well, then I'm gonna have you come in here every week." And he did. He had me come in here every week, and somewhere along the line, I got pissed off, and another guy I was running with went on the run. So we ended up, and I'm dealing a lot of weed at the time, man. And we end up staying in this loft, and I'm selling weed out of the loft. I'm running around, tons of money on me. I mean, in a book bag. It was very, very reckless. And but it just goes to show you, like, I don't know when to stop. You know what I mean? So that was 2005. What ends up happening is they they end up getting my brother. Found him somewhere in a hotel he was using, and they ended up just because I only had 2 months. I think it was less than 2 months. They ended up just writing me off because I remember we were in this loft, and the dude I was staying with in the loft had a girlfriend. And I said, we can't tell anybody where this is. Like, I got all this, and I can't, I had, I mean, a lot of weed, a lot of money. I said, you can't have, and I also had a gun, which I shouldn't have had. That's the same gun they got me with on my case. And I don't like guns. And he had the, I wait, and this is where I started to use too. Because that lifestyle, what I didn't mention in all this is I always was kind of just a drinker. And when I started getting into selling the second time, the pills started. I had never even took a pill up until I came home from that violation, and I remember everybody was eating the Vicodins, and I worked out. I worked out my first bid during when I was working at Rent Center. I was in the gym all the time. Then came my second bid, or before. Then came my violation. I hurt my back in between there. Remember coming home, my back hurt. There was a kid I was cool with. He said, he came over. I ended up getting like right when I came home. You have to work, so I got a job at like a warehouse just to keep my parole satisfied. And he was like, "Yo, because I was telling him how bad my back hurt. He's like, try one of these, and it was a Viking, and took two of them, and I said, whoa, where the hell, what, yo, it was like the best feeling the best way I could describe it was like, on Christmas morning when that euphoric feeling before you open up presents when you're like 8 years old. I got that same feeling, man. And, and I remember just saying, okay, I would take them on. It started with just on the weekends, and eventually it led to like during the week, and eventually it was an everyday thing. And I really didn't know that I didn't know much about them, and I didn't realize when you don't have them, after you take them for a while, that you'll get sick. And eventually it led to like dudes were getting the oxys. You had the little oxy 20s, 40s, even the big green 80s. So I ended up catching a habit, and I was taking those a lot. And I remember the first time I didn't have them and how sick I felt. But while we were on the run, we were doing that because I was wanted, he was wanted, and he had that girl come, and she had been doing heroin, I believe, and she got caught or something like that. And I told him, "Yo, well, we didn't know that yet." So when I saw her in the loft, I was like, "Yo, I'm getting out of here." I ended up finding somewhere else to go. I left, and I remember trying to call him, and we had gotten a fight. Me and him got in a fight over this. And I remember calling him and he wasn't answering. And we went over there and I could tell he ended up getting caught. He ended up calling me collect. I talked to him and he was like, "Yo, you were right, man. I'm so sorry about that." I was like, "What? It ain't nothing, man. Whatever." But that's when he told me, he was like, "Dude, they maxed you out." I'm like, "How do you? What do you mean?" Because I'm thinking I'm still on the run. I'm like hiding out, like meeting, having. I had a lot of runners around me at the time, man. Like and I had dude under my wing. I'd have dudes running for me here, running for me there. At this point in time, I mean, this kind of what I ended up doing was getting hotel rooms. I would get hotel rooms and have the people up north come down and bring me like anywhere from 75 to 100 pounds, sometimes 200, anywhere around there, whatever they had. And they would come down. I'd meet a hotel room and then I'd start calling people and they'd come pick up, or I'd have my boy, somebody I was rolling with, bring it to them. You know what I mean? Like, then they would have their runners come down. So through somebody I know, he had, and there was a couple different people doing it. So and at this time I'm making a lot of money, and I'm a kid I know knew a kid who knew these people. So he's like, "Look, they're gonna come meet us. There's a couple other people that they're gonna pick something up, but they got it's a certain connect." And we all met, and I remember I had a big chain, I had big diamond rings in, and came in with a big bag full of money, and I think the lady get his number or whatever. And I looked over at her, like, so we're all waiting there and she's giving everybody stuff. And she's like, "Give me your number. So boom, I threw her my number. And that's how I hooked up with the people who I ended up getting in trouble with. And although I made a lot of money with them, this is what led to me going to prison in the Fed. So she throws me her, so I throw her my number. She calls me, and they end up, I met. Now, at first, I never met them again. It would always be their runner. So I'd meet their runner. He'd come down, and like, what's crazy about this is when you're grabbing. Okay, at the time, this is beasters, right? These are coming from up north. These are 23. At the time, I think they were like anywhere from 2,000 to 23 from 2,000 to 2,300 a pound, and they were going for 26 to 28. So you'd make at least 500 for everyone you sold, and I'm getting at least an average probably 100 to 200 every 2 or 3 days. So it's adding up, and it's coming faithfully, and it's time consuming because when you meet them, you got to count all this money, man, and that takes a minute. And we'd always do it in 5 stacks of 5,000. And they'd have to count and count, and so it's a couple hours it takes, and you're in this hotel with them. Um, when I started, so this goes on for a while. So this is 2000. Let me see. I got busted in '07. So this is like it's probably like I dealt with them for about a year and a half. So this is like '06. And everything was going good. Everything was going good. I would see them, everything's going good. And then one the now it was like a family. It was a mother, and I bring you those statements. Remember those statements? If you look at them, there's the mother, and she had two sons, and then there was the runner I dealt with, and then they had another runner. Most of the time, it would be the runner. He would come down and meet us. Once in a while, the younger brother came. So the one time the younger brother came, they got caught going back, and what I didn't know is they only found money on him, but it was a large amount of money, and that's when he first used my name. I think he told them my nickname, but they knew, you know. I think they put it together who I was or had my nickname or something, which was Rue. And I remember one of them telling me that happened. So we took a break. I think I went to Florida. My dad had moved down to Florida at the time. I went to see because my parents had split by this time. I went down to Florida, stayed with my father for a while. I came back. Dude called me, said everything was good again. And I kept dealing with him. Somewhere along the lines, they started like I would get a lot of times these are sealed. So like let's say they drop, we don't weigh them. There's so many. They're just, they got they use these big hockey bags, and all their trucks had, so one of the trucks, you would take your ID, it looks like a music box, the 12-inch woofers. You'd put it in the side of it, and it would open up, and it would be like this hidden box. Everything would come out. And they had that in like every one of their trucks. That was part of like the big part of their case was like they knew a guy that was doing this for them or whatever. So they would be in big hockey bags because a lot of them play lacrosse or hockey or something like that. So, and they're heavy, man. You got 100, that's 100 pounds, in each one. So that's 200 pounds. And they'd be in not cellophane, but they seal them. So I never, we got to the point where you start knowing each other and you're not weighing them no more. And even the one runner would come, like for a while when we weren't doing anything, it got dry because a lot of times dealing up north during a certain time, like when the water, because it goes over the St. Lawrence River. So when it becomes like in between, like when it's not frozen, it's just icy. So when it's frozen, you snowmobiles. When it's not frozen, it's boats. But when it's in between, it gets dry because nothing could come over. So there's a period of time where you got to wait for everything to melt so they can go over with boats. So sometimes during those periods, there'd be nothing going on, and that kid came down and stayed with us. So he knew a little. He knew, if you see the statement he wrote, you'll see that he knew a whole lot. And he ended up dealing with somebody else too, and that I'll get to that. So when he came down, or when they started coming down, about 3 to 4 months before we all got arrested, so you call, I give you 10 pounds, him 10 pounds, him 10, him 20. I'm getting calls back. Everything's off a half ounce. Everything's off a half ounce. I'm like, what? I'm letting them know, listen, they're all off, man. Oh, well, I'll take care of it. I take care of it. Well, that happened for the next couple months. That happened every single time. What I didn't know was they're getting pulled over. They're getting, like one of their guys got pulled over. Once I got all the discovery when we got busted, the guys were getting pulled over, uh, getting money taken. They got drugs taken. They were trying to make up for that by doing that with me. So I was getting kind of pissed. By this time, uh, like I told you, I had a goal, which was a mill. I think I had already surpassed that, and I was like, I wanted to. My second son was about to be born. My girlfriend was pregnant, and I was like, on the verge of like, you know what, this is it, man. Like, and I started getting in. I told you I was getting into the pills. I was using, wasn't thinking straight, and I ended up, I was getting, you know, I think it's more that I wasn't thinking straight. Plus, I felt like they owed me a lot of money, and I'm like, the only way, and I know myself, the only way I'm going to stop is if I can't have this connect. I can't, knowing this type of money is there, I can't, I have to, so I came up with the idea to take weed from them. And this became a big part of the case. They came down and met me, and there's a place where I used to meet them, and there was a dude I dealt with in Albany who would take a large sum. So I told him to meet me there, that he needed a large sum. I parked the car that I was using. They gave me, you know, in the case it says, I don't know, 35 pounds. I think it was a lot more than that. But they gave me the weed. I went around the building, jumped in my boy's car, and left. So this time it was the mother. She was like the head of it was the mother and the two sons. There was an older son and a younger son. And what I didn't tell you was the younger son wasn't involved anymore, and because when he got caught with the money, the brother broke his nose, like, and when I did that, she lit the car on fire. She fucking lit the car right on fire, right there in Albany. And she took pictures of this. Now, they were getting pulled over left, right. Now, if you know the feds they're going to watch you, and they're going to build the case on you. And every time they pull you over, let's say they pull you over with 100,000, they know it's about this many pounds. They pull you over this many pounds. They can add that up. They don't want to get you for the bust. They want to get you on the conspiracy, so they can add it up, and the punishment's harder. And that's exactly what they did. They were building the case up so they could say, we can definitely say you were dealing with this amount. And her phone had been tapped. And when I got my discovery, it was this high of just, I remember going through and it was all them talking. And because of this incident, what I did, they just went crazy on the phones, and they're being watched and tapped, and they're talking left and right. They were talking about killing me, talking about, I mean, they said everything, putting hits out on me. And what ended up happening was, uh, when they got arrested, they got her. They intercept, like in the statements when you read them, it says that they intercepted the calls of her burning the car, and they all wrote statements. Now they didn't have much on me. They didn't catch me with nothing. They didn't have a sale, and what they did have was they had that one call that night that I called her. They had even been following them with a helicopter. If you look in the paperwork, that they followed them down to like a hotel about a couple weeks prior to this, and they couldn't. They thought they saw me come into the hotel, but we noticed a car, and I ended up leaving out a back door, and they lost track of me, and they weren't sure if it was me or not in the paperwork, but they ended up all writing statements on me, and that led to a superseding, and they got arrested, and they arrested me a couple of days later on a superseding indictment, and we all ended up north, and then they arraigned. I think they arraigned me there, and then we all ended up in a bus together. I didn't realize at that time that they had all wrote statements on me. Had no idea. I wasn't sure what happened exactly. So they bring us to Albany. I ended up getting the best lawyer in Albany, which is Terrence Kinlan. His son's the DA of Albany now, Lee. And I remember it wasn't long at all, man. I mean, the feds, they put this together perfect. So I hired him on like a Monday. By Friday, he was visiting me, and he's like, you know, and I'm thinking, all right, I could fight this. I don't know what they could have, like, and he's like, you're not fighting nothing. And I'm like, "Well, what," he's like, I think he had 1, 2, 3. There's the one kid didn't say nothing, but the mother, the 2 sons, the runner, and then 2 kids I know. So I had 5 statements against me. I don't, I wasn't gonna say nothing about the 2 kids that I know. Uh, it is what it is, man. But the main ones that hurt me were those 3. They were collaborating. They minimized their involvement, but they maximized mine. The feds, when they arrested him, made it like we only want him. He took, because they knew they knew everything they were saying on the phone. The way they were talking, like they didn't care. You don't do that. I mean, they knew everything, man, and they used that against them and told them, "Look, we want Jared, man. He stole this. And they fell for it, wrote statements, and what ended up happening was he's like, in her one statement, she said I put a gun to her head. I never used a gun. I didn't do shit. They knew she was lying because of what she was said on the phone. They knew the real truth, but they played it like that was the truth to get me to look bad, so they would fall for, yeah, if we write statements, like they were going to go home or something right then and there, which didn't happen. So this is where I was approached with a decision to make. And I knew I know how prison works. I did a state bid, and I knew how the feds work. That you got if your paperwork's not good, that's like your license. The state wasn't like that at all. Um, you can nobody really asked you for your paperwork. There's no cars, and the feds are a whole different story. So what ended up happening was my lawyer said to me, they want you to cooperate. And I was like, nah, I can't do that, man. I can't. And he's like, well, you know, and that's when he told me about the statements. And he had this, as soon as I got back to the county, or as soon as I got back to my cell, they had, the next day I had all the statements, all the paperwork. He had everything delivered to me. I looked at them. They moved, because at the time I was on one side and the one kid was on the other, and I could talk to him. They moved him right after that, but I knew he was a diabetic, and I knew he went down to the infirmary. So I put in for a sick call. I ended up seeing him down there, and I asked him about it, and he told me, "No, I didn't do nothing. I didn't write no statement." I'm like, "Bro, you gotta be straight up with me, man." I'm like, "Look, I just saw my lawyer. He sent me the statements. He's like, nah, man, they're lying to you." And I'm like, "Bro," I'm like, "All right, man, look, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. If you don't, you gotta let me know what's up." And he wouldn't admit it. So I ended up, we're having to really think about what I gotta do. And I remember calling home and explaining the situation to my girlfriend, and she said, and in her mind, it was like this. It was like, "Look, man, if you got a kid, you got one on the way, there's a reason you're in there, and if you don't do this, then I can't be with someone who's, gonna put that first." And I'm telling her how tough it's gonna be. She said, "I don't care how tough it's gonna be." You get what I'm saying? And I had to think about it, man. So I what I ended up telling my lawyer was, "Look, because I'm not willing to cooperate or tell them anything else. I'll cooperate against the ones I wrote statements, and that's it. And that's all I'll do." And he kind of said that, "Well, look, I'll see what's up, but when it comes to cooperating, you're supposed to tell everything, and otherwise you might not get you might not get any, um, the more basically what happened was I was willing to only cooperate against them. They came back with, well, we can't guarantee any time. The only way you're going to get time off, and I wasn't even so much cared about that, but the only way you'll get time off is if they go to trial, because we already know everything. There's nothing that there's nothing you can give us. We would just, if they went to trial, you would have to take the stand. And I basically agreed to that. I pled to 10 to life because it was my second drug felony. And they weren't. I didn't think they were going to go to trial. I really had no idea they would go to trial, and I thought for sure that I was getting a 10 to life. And I remember, and it took almost 3 years. I was there. I was in the county jails for like 2.5 years. And then I remember I got called. They sent me way out to Delaware County with a bunch of guys. We all went out there, and that place was a little weird. But we were out there for almost 2 years. They called me to Schenectady County, and then my lawyer let me know, like, it's going to be in like a week, and these guys were going to trial. And all I had to do was say it was yes. What they had, everything. They had all the information. I had to just say yes. They did that, because when they told on me, they were telling on themselves. They minimized a lot, but and that's why I didn't get a lot of time off. So I pleaded 10 to life. I ended up taking a stand. Just the mother and the one son went to trial, and I mean, it wasn't an easy thing to do, and I knew that it wasn't gonna be easy in prison, and I'll get to that. So I took the stand. They ended up blowing trial. I ended up getting sent to Ferriton. I ended up knowing a kid there. Now, this is where it gets weird, right?
So what was your final sentence then?
I ended up getting, so what's crazy is, so it was 10 to life because of the mandatory minimum. My guidelines and my criminal history put me at 63 months to 78 months. By me cooperating, I got a 5K1, but I didn't give them anything, right? And so what they said was, some people will go home. Some people, well, for me, they just got rid of the what's it called? The mandatory minimum, and then sentenced me at the lowest end of the 63 to 78. So I got 63 months. So, I mean, you can look at it like I got about 3 years off. And which ain't bad, but I don't know, man. You got to weigh things out. So it wasn't easy though in prison, right?
And how old were you by that point?
I was 28. So I get to prison, but at this time I know how to bid, man. Once you know how to bid, prisons is a little easier. You got to do the bid. You can't let the bid do you. And what I mean by that is, you just can't focus on the outside life. You gotta just. I don't like visits. I'm not because it slows my bid down. Um, and I just focus on what I can. But I got in there, and I knew a kid there, and that was probably not a good thing for me, because he hung around with a lot of the Italian guys. I grew up with him. So he meets me in the yard, but he knows he knows. I mean, I grew up with this dude, like grew up with him. And I mean, he was walking around he was in the Italian car with the major one. Like, there are a lot of known names in that car. And Farrington's not, it's a medium high. It's a real prison. I seen a dude get, I don't know if he died or not, but I seen a dude get. I mean, I seen a lot of shit there. Um, I'll tell you, I was with a guy. I'll get back to that. So I see him in the yard. I walk the yard with him. And he was like, "Yo, look, I'm gonna put you in the car." Da, da, da. And he's like, "But your paperwork's good, right?" And I told him, knowing what I know now and how the feds work, like I probably, if I did it over, I don't know if I'd do it. It ended up working out for me, but it took some time and it took. So anyway, he asked me. I'll get to it. He says to me, "Look, I'm gonna need your paperwork," and I said, "He's like, you're good, right?" And I'm like, "Yo, that's what I got to talk to you about." And he's like, "What's up, man?" What? So I explained to him what I just told you. Like, look, I told him exactly what happened, and I said, and I got, I got the paperwork with me. If you want to look it over, like I'm telling you the truth, like this is what happened. These dudes told on me. I only cooperated against the dudes that told on me. They don't know nothing about none of the people I dealt anything with. Nobody else got arrested. I didn't go wear wires. I just was willing to. You punch me, I punch you back. And they tried to say all kinds of other shit. If we read those statements, you'll see what I'm talking about. So, and I had him with me, the statements, and he's like, "Yo, man," he's like, "Well, I appreciate you telling me that because I think I thought in my mind, look, I'm just gonna be straight up because what I did. So a lot of people are black and white, man. They see it like you either cooperate or you don't. That's point blank, period. And that's how most of these guys are, right? Or a lot of people will just go with those rules. But but I thought, like, you know, like I felt like what I did, like I was indicted because of them. Okay, they put me there. I stepped to the dude. I asked him straight up, "What did he do this?" He lied to me. Like if he just told me the truth and that he could fight these and what do they call it? Recant his statements that maybe we could do something. But he lied to my face. They lied to the feds. I was like, and I had 2 kids at home, and if I chose to do the 10 years, and because I wanna had an easy bid, then who then more then who am I as a father? I don't know. It's a moral dilemma, I guess you can look at it, man. Um, because I don't believe in snitching, and that's the funny thing. And he was like, "Yeah, I appreciate it," but I think what by me telling him, it got around. I mean, overnight everybody knew, and like it got real cold, bro. Like real cold, real lonely, real like. And I've always been a person that was cool with everybody, and people gravitate to. And I always held, like I carry myself well, and that helped me later on because I earned a lot of respect in there. I stayed on the weight pit. I didn't, like I told him, like because he came to me right out. He's like, look, I'm gonna pull you in my car. I deal with these dudes, but they're gonna need your paperwork. And I said, not. And that's when I told him. And he said, the next day when I talked to him, he's like, look, man, he's like, I had to tell them what's up. He's like, and I can't fuck with you no more, bro. And we didn't talk, and we still don't talk. And sometimes I regret even saying it because what I found out later and how this system works, and I'm gonna see, you could probably relate to this, is that that got around to everybody, man. And there were people that didn't care, and there were people that wouldn't even come 10 feet from you like you had the plague, man. And I remember thinking in the beginning, how am I gonna get through this? Or people that just think like like I think a lot of guys in the Fed, you have cars, right? And I think in the state you don't have that. So I seen a lot of people get abused in the state. State was a little rougher because you might have a guy that's weak and can't hold their own, and unless they have somebody look out for them, they're going to get abused. Where in the feds, you can get in with your car, and now your car protects you as long as your paperwork's good. Do you understand what I'm saying? There wasn't really that in the state. Now, what I'm trying to get to is I remember there was a kid in the dorm with us, and he was from around my way, and I just remember thinking I just wanted to get home. You know, my main focus was to get home. And sometimes I think people forget, he hears I'm hot, like something sweet, you know what I mean? And it almost got real ugly for him and me. And I just had to chill. And then I ended up in the halfway house with him and almost lost my time in there too. But what ends up happening is as time goes on, a lot of people wouldn't talk to me. I ended up cool with a couple dudes from around Albany. I worked out with them. They never asked questions about the paperwork. I don't know if their paperwork was good or not, but I carried myself well in there. And as time went on, people got more friendly. Then little by little, someone would be like, "Yo, what's up with you?" And then want to see the paperwork, and I would show them, and they'd be like, "Damn, I don't know, man." Like, and that's what kept happening. And as time went on, I'd show more people, and eventually, one of the main guys, "Yo, he's all right," and it kind of turned, and I started to get a little bit more respect, and people, it changed. I can even tell you, there was a time where there was a kid in the program that we were in who did something that was like, and he had good paperwork and everything, and he did something that was kinda, because, RDAP can be, funny, and he did something that was kinda, considered snitching, and his paperwork was good, and I'm walking with him, one of the main dudes came up to me like, "Why are you walking with this dude?" And he knew what was up with my case, so, um it was, it was tricky, man, and, the other thing that really bugged me, man, was how many guys I found out because now everybody knows this, right? So, I would get guys coming up to me before they leave that everyone thought was good, and I can't tell you how many times this happened to me. One of the main dudes that was, like, down with the white dudes came to my dorm or my cell. He was like, "Yo," he was leaving the next day, and he said, "Just wanna let you know, man, like, I respect what you did and being straight up about that." He's like, "These motherfuckers don't even know," and he tells me everything, and I'm just thinking to myself, to me, what piece of shit, like, he do like, just because I don't know, man, it was crazy in there, that tho and then how many dudes got their paperwork, um, like, had somebody, change it for them. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And then I'm thinking to myself, "Wow, man." So you are showing this dude fake paperwork. You're hot as fuck. And now they're letting you in their little circle thinking everything's all good. And who knows what these guys could be doing? Like, that's crazy to me. And that's going on a lot more than people think, man. I saw a whole nother side to it. And then I'm thinking to myself how stupid I was to just be straight up with everybody. But then it worked out for me, you know what I mean? Because of that and how I carried myself. And I had my paper, I had all my statements like showing them this is what happened.
How much time did you end up doing in total?
About 5 years. I did almost the whole time. Even though I got RDAP, I ended up I it was Schenectady goes to so you go to so you get a year off your program when you take RDAP, and then you get the 6-month halfway house. Our halfway house was closed down in Albany. So everybody from Schenectady goes to the Albany halfway house. It got closed down for some reason. It's open now. And when that happened, they sent us to Syracuse. And because of that, Syracuse got overcrowded. So I graduated RDAP, should have been home. Um, had to wait like for a date, and in the process of waiting for a date, a situation happened, and I kind of told the kid like to keep his mouth shut. So they took it as a threat. He went and ended up telling on me. I got rolled back in, and the only reason I got rolled back in because the doctor, I think it was Doctor Redondo, he liked, he took a liking to me and said, I gotta roll you back. You're gonna have to, he's like, normally I kick you out and you get nothing. He's like, I'm gonna put you back in criminal thinking. You're gonna do that over, and if as long as you get that, you'll get your date. And by the time I did that and got my date, which was still crowded when I got that, I only got, I don't know, I think I got like I don't know. I didn't get the whole year. I got like 6 months off, and then I was in the halfway house for like 2 months, and then ended up home
What
with the
year?
ankle bracelet.
What year was that you were out?
2012.
2012.
Yeah,
And you've been out of trouble since.
ever since. Yeah, I got all, and then I had 8 years of post release, and I got 3 years early on that. That's another thing, that the POs there were. I had a good PO, Pat Note. I'll give props to him. He even helped me get a job, man. Like, he was a good dude, and I got a job helping help troubled kids at LaSalle, and their motto was about second chances. And I had to, and they didn't really hire felons. They could, but they weren't. And when I did, and, I had just got out of RDAP, so I had a lot of the lingo, and I interviewed real well with the lady. She had me. I ended up doing 3 or 4 interviews, and then they called my parole officer, and he said, "You know what I told her?" Or post-release supervision. It's not actually parole. She said, "I told her, your motto's second chances." You know what I mean? And she said, "Yo, that was it." And I got the job, and then I got to work with troubled teens or troubled kids, and I really enjoyed that, man. I really and could relate to these kids. Uh, I remember, I really enjoyed that.
What do you do now?
Right now, I got a part-time job. I'd rather not say where, just because it's like a school, and
Mhm.
I also do sell clothing online, which is my main income, and it's been a blessing. And you know, my son Landon, he played football at Chalmont. I'm so proud of him. Um, he was. You ever heard of Springfield?
Massachusetts?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
the college. So he was recruited by Springfield. He was accepted there. He ended up leaving. He pulled his hamstring the first week, came home. But I'm real proud of him. He's got a couple online things going on. He's got Strive Nation. It's Strive Nation Clothing, Strive Nation Fitness, and Strive Nation part. He's doing music too. And he's a little entrepreneur, and I'm really proud of him, and I'm really proud of my older son too, because he probably took it the hardest when all this happened. He was a daddy's boy, and what I didn't mention is how close I was to him when I got ripped out of his life. He was 7 years old. He was born in 2000, so 2007 he was 7. And I'll never forget when I first got locked up. And one time I told you I took all the weed into the cellar. He came down there. I didn't see him, and he saw me with it. And what's that, Dad? It's salad. And I got him out of there. And I normally didn't do things at home after that. Is when I would use like I'd rent like apartments or use the hotel. I didn't like to bring anything home. And I remember saying to him, I was on the phone. He's like, "Dad, when you coming home?" And I said, "This is right in the beginning." I said, "I don't know, man." He goes, "Is it because of the salad?" And I was like, "Oh my God, these guys know a lot more that's going on than you think, man." And it's that's what kills me is the people around you and your loved ones that get hurt from this. You know what I mean?
What do you think's the biggest lesson that your story has taught you?
That you affect everyone around you. That it's not you, it's not just you. I thought when I was younger, it was always, look, I do the crime, I'll do my time. But everyone that loves you is gonna feel that. You're not doing that bit alone, man. They're worrying about you. I know that just because of my kids, and when they get in a situation or or anything, I'm worried about them. I'm going through that with them. And everything that I had to go through, my brother went through, my mom had to go through that with us. You know what I mean? And and for that, to them, I'm sorry. I am so sorry that I put you through that. I'm sorry to the community for the crimes I've committed. And from here on out, I want to make changes in people's life to help them. I want to help people. I want to help anybody I can in any way I can. And you know, and I think I owe that. You know, I owe that to my community, and I owe that to my family. You know, and I don't know. I think that's it, man.
Well, Jared, I appreciate you coming on the show today, man.
You got it, bud. I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me, man. I really respect what you're doing. I think it's awesome.
Thank you for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome.